Hello and welcome to a new episode of Fiddler's Green podcast number 76, The New Romantics. This is a new microphone, so hopefully you're all hearing me. I tested it multiple times, but well, yeah, it's not really a new microphone. It's a new audio interface. I'm told that this is going to improve the clarity of the recordings, make it sound more like a professional podcast. I have sound insulation up, so hopefully for once in this new building, I'll be able to have a podcast that doesn't sound like I'm recording out of a tin jar. But thank you guys so much for joining me. This is the first podcast in about 3 or 4 weeks. There was a number of things that came up. Family was visiting for the 4th of July. It was just an inconvenient time. And I also kind of wanted to think about how to do these things. I really haven't come up with a better way of doing this. But there's a sense always when you're doing podcasts like this, where I'm doing monologues into the screen, that somehow I'm doing YouTube wrong. And indeed, I am doing YouTube wrong. I don't exactly know how to do it right. It seems like I should be producing videos or maybe doing clips or something along those lines, but it never really seems like I can nail the format very well, and I'm too busy with the other things I'm doing to kind of make that a priority on my channel. And for the time being, I'm going to keep these podcasts going until I can find a format that better suits me. And while I'm going to make sure I have the best audio available. Don't worry, I'm not going to get rid of the channel altogether. I'm not going to get rid of the podcast altogether. I'm just talking about a changing of the format so that it's not once every 2 weeks for 3 hours, which seems to be kind of a weird format for the YouTube algorithm. But I think maybe that just happened because people like hearing me in long form for a reason. I don't think that it'd be quite as good if I were only going on for an hour-long podcast every week. That might be kind of weird. Plus, I don't think it would be necessarily as good. I think that oftentimes what happens is I just start rambling on a few topics, and then I develop kind of a momentum and a direction organically from the kind of things that I'm talking about. And this idea, I think like Kevin Deanna and a lot of other people, they have like these pre-scripted rants, and they get on and they're so good at just projecting and speaking extemporaneously that they just nail it in 20 minutes. And that's the podcast. Then maybe they go on to have an interview guest or something like that. I'd like to do that. I aspire to do something like that, but that's kind of not what this show is about. This show is about thinking over the events of the last 2 weeks. I can't do it every week, not because I couldn't speak every week, although I'd have to I'd have to clear out my calendar every week. The problem is that there's usually not enough material to do a lecture like this every week. It's hard for me to come up with material that seems like it's fresh and not just a rehash. It's important for me in these lectures to have something that I actually want to say to an audience. And if you look at what's kind of killing YouTube right now, I think there's a lot of people who feel that YouTube is a dying format. And the reason is, if you look at YouTube right now, a lot of it is kind of the same thing over in repetition again and again and again. And people develop sort of brand recognitions, but the people who make use of the algorithm really well are either people who cover the news, like my friend LP from My Hypocrite, or people who are kind of these gutter streamers like Hassan and Asmongold. And probably Asmongold's a great guy. I don't want to put him down, but it's just not the kind of content that I want to produce. I want to produce content that is going somewhere and that's about something. And here is an original idea I have right now. And I haven't found a way to do that in the YouTube format. Usually I would just make a video essay, but those are not time efficient at all. A video essay is basically like one of these recording sessions, like 3 hours of recording. And then you have to cut down the audio, which takes even more time. And in the world where they aren't prioritized in the algorithm, and political YouTubers just have zero growth, it makes it very, very difficult to do it. But talking about various different things that we are doing on YouTube, while I did not have, oh, I'm sorry, did I? kind of surprised, why didn't that switch slides? Well, I did not do my ordinary live stream on the scheduled live stream, I should say, on this channel. I did do at least 3 sessions where I recorded me and Aaron McIntyre playing one of my favorite board games, the video game version. I didn't fly to Florida to play Blood Bowl with Aaron, but we did a little bit of a semi-recreational Blood Bowl league. This is like a fantasy football thing with, J.R.R. Tolkien characters, or Warhammer characters to be more accurate, playing the actual football. And, originally we were going to kind of cast this. This is obviously low quality content that's just very casual, and we're there to shoot the shed. And one of the things, this is always very hard to play video games and also comment on ideas and news events. It's something that I had a very hard time doing because you're trying to win the game, or you're trying to calculate the paths of your little, virtual miniatures on the tabletop or whatever, and then actually win. You're doing the math in your head, and you have to talk about like Mitch McConnell or the war in Iran or something like that. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to do, and I kind of wanted to highlight, was to continue an ongoing discussion that I have been having with Aaron McIntyre since we met and discussed this in person at the OGC conference back in June. I don't remember if we've done a podcast since I got back from the Old Glory Club conference. This is the national conference that they have in Tennessee. I've gone... Good Lord, I can't exactly remember. The organization who ran this conference changed sometime in 2023, but it's always held in Tennessee, and it's become so popular now that basically it's only for leadership because we can't accommodate the number of people who'd want to come otherwise. But it does just afford people a great opportunity to sit around and talk about various ideas. Now, Aaron's talk at this conference was a very academic talk about Leo Strauss and Jaffa, and sort of the creation of neoconservatism on the public square. And really, I think the takeaway, and I think Aaron has a much more negative view of these people than I do. I have a very negative view of neoconservatism. I have a very negative view of all these ex-Trotskyists who try to resurrect a based version of globalism. But one thing it was an excellent speech on the part of Aaron's, I should say. But one of the things that I always felt was a weakness, and this is someone who read a collection of Strauss essays 20 years ago. That's how far away I am from my reading Leo Strauss. So, Aaron had me at a disadvantage there. And, but my feeling reading Leo Strauss was that all of these people were trying to deal with a problem of how limited government or liberal government or just compassionate government could exist inside a world that did not have some kind of motivating religious ethos. This is the problem of Nietzsche's Death of God. And this is something that it's a problem that doesn't go away. And obviously Strauss's idea, I'm going to butcher it here a little bit, but Strauss's idea was to kind of create a pseudo-religion around the Founding Fathers and the Constitution itself. And this is sort of the beginning of what we see as the propositional nation. It's obviously not the first time that phrase was used. It was always considered sort of an experiment in democracy. But it was an experiment that a particular nation was undertaking. It was not this idea that everybody who held to this proposition was an American. That doesn't really make any sense. But because Strauss is trying to come up with an idea that can be brought to the world in the same way that, say, communism might be brought to the world, this idea of Americanism had to be universalized. And this is where you get the Straussian perspective that kind of is born straight out of this Straussian idea. This is where a lot of Straussians are criticized for this idea that you have a public and private position. And the public position is something like the propositional nation, and the private position is more nuanced. It embodies this idea that you're practicing real politics, and that in some ways you believe in the principles of liberalism, but in other ways you understand that this is pure propaganda. And this is Strauss is no lightweight, but, I think Aren's very critical of this idea. And this sort of segued into a conversation about red states versus blue states. And I kind of try to make the Blood Bowl streams about this, although obviously we're just kind of trying to screw around and play a video game version of a board game. And the sense is, and I told this to Aren, the sense I'm getting is that the fate of Red America pretty much is established at this stage. We know where Red America is going. We know where conservatism is going. That has been more or less established. But the critical unknown in our political calculations, and as we look to the future as Americans, is the eventual fate of Blue America. And is the eventual fate of, this is where it links back to Strauss and this need for sort of this internationalist ideology. Also, the need to come up with some story about us as Americans and Westerners that has sort of a universalist appeal. The universalist appeal is a necessary component. And then, of course, our current global universalist appeal is absolute toxic poison. But this means that you need to replace it with something. And I think Aren is more of the idea that, and I don't want to paraphrase his views, but that unless sort of this universalizing global appeal is done away with entirely, that Red America and the potential of America is going to be crushed under the heel of whatever noble law we've decided to put in place to make sure that the world doesn't go to hell. So, I mean, that is what it is. That was sort of the conversation. And over the course of the 3 Blood Bowl games, I kind of tried to tease Aren on this, try to bring up the question of what ultimately is going to develop from this particular moment. And I mean, I think the last, the sort of what we're dealing with right now, what probably is in the news, insofar as people read the news or watch the news still, if you were to turn on the television, you'd be hearing a lot about the death of Lindsey Graham, perhaps the impending death of Mitch McConnell. This is sort of following very clearly the lines that we would expect. The old guard of neoconservatives, the people who were directly inspired by Jaffa and Strauss and all these things. I mean, they didn't really, probably never read these people, but these were their thoughts were molded by this perspective nonetheless. Obviously, Lindsey Graham's was always going on a crusade for our international, order that is the American exceptionalism. Very much a direct line can be drawn from that concept to Leo Strauss, even though he probably never read him. This is sort of what he is implicitly reacting to when he was on these crusades to start a war with Iran, which he eventually got before his death. And but there's not going to be another one, right? There's not going to be another Lindsey Graham that comes after him. There's not going to be another Mitch McConnell that comes after him. And so I think the fate of the Republican Party is more or less established. It's a little harder to see what comes next. This is something that I know Scott Greer has talked about a lot. I mean, in some sense, it is easy to see what comes next. What obviously comes next for the Republican Party is to become more or less a nationalist party and some mixture of nationalism and populism. The problem is that just like in the Republican Party of 2016, there is still a huge division between the people who are in a populist mode and the people who are trying to be in an intellectual mode. I guess this is an opportunity for us because what we're saying is just absolute insanity. Also in the news right now is the trial of Tyler Robinson, the guy who shot Charlie Kirk. Very famously, what was it? I think it was less than six or 7 months ago. It's amazing. It feels like years ago now, doesn't it? It was November of 2025 or something like that. Maybe it was October. I don't know. But I mean, it was less than a year ago, certainly, almost closer to half a year. And now we're having finally the trial of this person who shot Charlie Kirk. And all I'm hearing is these nutso conspiracies coming out of various internet personalities and Candace Owens. about how Charlie Kirk's widow and the Mossad or Egypt or Jordan or Russia orchestrated this massive attempt for Charlie Kirk to be assassinated for anyone else but the person who obviously shot him. And this is... it's embarrassing. It shows you directly the limitations of populism. The forces... There's not like... Candace Owens is one of the most popular podcasters in the world right now. Her audience is basically the base of the Republican Party. And she's peddling nonsense constantly. None of her ideas are coherent. They're all just little lunacies that she's chasing down in the moment, trying to spin some kind of narrative that's appealing to the audience. And it frankly is incredibly embarrassing saying this. It is an indication that a populist front is impossible to make in the modern world, at least from this, because you're never going to have anybody who's involved in these conspiracies do anything. They're not reliable enough to do anything. They can't keep a narrative straight. They can't keep a story straight. They can't focus on any one issue long enough. They're spinning stories about how the Egyptian Air Force assassinated Charlie Kirk from a drone. Meanwhile, they're losing track of their own country. They're losing track of all the various political issues like the SAVE Act that are just going through. They're never going to get passed, and they're going to lose control of the demographics of their country. And in the meantime, Lindsey Graham might have died. Mitch McConnell might be on his way out. But the old guard conservatives are looking for a way to get back in. And this is the one from Libertarians. This is Nick Gillespie. I actually saw Nick Gillespie right at the time when I stopped being a libertarian. I saw him at a Portland bookstore and I got his autograph for one of his books. At that time, I was a conservative. I had just come back to Catholicism and I was trying to find a way to make liberal conservatism work with my knowledge of everything that I had seen being on the internet for 10 years, which was quite a challenge because I had read all these blogs like Unqualified Reservations, and I read Nick Land, and I had read Steve Saylor and all this stuff, and I even had read Jared Taylor. I was fully abreast of all of these radical figures, but I still thought there might be a way to make liberalism work. And now I'm looking at these people. I'm looking at Jonah Goldberg. He was another one of those guys. I'm like, he might be the guy who can make liberalism work. He knows a lot about what makes liberalism fail. He wrote a book about the Third Reich called Liberal Fascism. So he's just the kind of person to oppose the left. And this is just nonsense. These people have no idea what's going on. Jonah Goldberg is, he is high on his own supply. He runs a podcast that chief ambition is to sabotage the conservatives' only hope to ever be relevant again. He wants to sabotage all efforts at electing populist immigration restrictionist presidents, which is the only way that a country like the United States will have enough stability to ever be conservative again. This is a farcical figure at this stage, Jonah Goldberg. And I thought I thought I saw everything about this. I thought that had seen the worst of this until I saw this Nick Gillespie tweet. What is to say? The global fertility is a function of women's increased equality, and it should be celebrated, not fretted over. What do I want to say about this, Nick Gillespie? This is insane. This is insane. What do you expect to get? The decline in global fertility. Nick Gillespie might believe that there's going to be an AI apocalypse, and what it means to be human is going to radically be remade in the next 10 years by some crazy basilisk god or whatever. I think this is an outside possibility, but Nick Gillespie might actually believe that. But short of that apocalyptic situation, what does Nick Gillespie think the future is going to be? Like, is he even in reality? Are people like Jonah Goldberg or Nick Gillespie even in the reality we occupy? Demographics are changing due to immigration, and these new immigrants don't vote libertarian. Furthermore, you have a government that runs on entitlements. I know for a fact libertarians can't cut entitlements. All libertarians can do is target little boondoggles that don't add up to jack shit on the federal budget and cut them so they can cathartically perform this act of being small government. Yes, but when Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security balloon up and the Social Security Trust Fund runs dry, which it will be in 7 years, 6 years, I don't know how fast it's going to go, but once that trust fund goes up in smoke, then you're hitting a full-on Ponzi scheme, which means as entitlements balloon due to the aging population, there'll be more and more and more taxes coming due on the people who are currently working. This will destroy any idea that the United States has a limited government. The entitlements will absolutely swamp any idea that Americans are entitled to a majority of their paycheck, since almost all of it will be absorbed by the government in order to pay out current entitlement holders. I know you can't get rid of entitlements. Reason Magazine and the Republicans have been completely unable and unwilling to get rid of entitlements for their entire existences at this stage. It's insulting to my intelligence to behave that they actually have a plan to get rid of these third rails in American politics. So your idea of limited government and increased autonomy is ridiculous. No such increase in autonomy will ever occur. And the reason, like the great thing that we're getting from this decline in women's fertility is female equality. Female equality, well, this female equality, that is the fruits of all the terrible things we have done to suppress employment, to balloon entitlements, to act like libertarians, which basically means just let people kill themselves on the street with the drugs. That's the only liberty that I've ever seen Nick Gillespie actually defend successfully. Sexual degeneracy, and then open air drug use to the point where cities are absolutely unlivable. Those were successes. You know, you also, I'm sorry, Nick, you also got online gambling legalized too. I don't want to sell the libertarians' achievements short in this regard. You got online gambling properly legalized. So now everyone's drug addicted, porn addicted, gambling addicted. Our cities are absolute wastelands. And what are the fruits of liberty we have? Well, we have an imploding entitlement system that will bury us in increased taxes. So we have that to look forward to, but we can't rock the boat. We can't possibly consider introducing any measures that might increase the birth rate or encourage the population to have more children, because that would harm our other achievement, which is female equality. Female equality. Well, I don't know. I thought that we had female equality 100 years ago. I mean, we certainly had female voting 100 years ago. Although we could contest whether voting is really a right, I think that that's kind of a misconception that voting is some kind of human right. I don't think wielding political power is a human right. But now we have female equality. We have girl power. We have girl bosses. We didn't have that before. These are the fruits of liberty. Is now we have girl bosses. Except female equality in the modern world is 100% government subsidized, and Nick Gillespie knows this. Nick Gillespie knows that these jobs that employ women are essentially a function of the civil rights regime. A lot of them would not exist if we did not have regulations on, I mean, it's not direct regulations on who companies can hire, but it's the indirect threat of lawsuits. It's various programs that are connected to government. It's equal opportunity hiring. It's the threat of liability in the occasion that you're accused of something and you do not have proper human resources or special hiring programs in place. And everything about this, from the NGOs that employ these women to the subsidies we give to the fields that they work in, to the affirmative action programs and equal opportunity programs that keep them in their equal places. It is 100% government subsidized. So all I'm hearing from Nick Gillespie is, I need a cool way to sound like, to basically support progressive policies and not sound like a total cuck. Nick Gillespie was famous for always wearing this leather jacket. He has this like leather biker jacket he wears around everywhere. And this is his signature thing. I'm such a cool guy. I'm wearing a leather jacket. It's just a symbol of everything libertarian. It's an affectation. It's like being a libertarian is like wearing a cool biker leather jacket, even though you probably don't own a motorcycle. It's the idea that you might own a motorcycle. Libertarianism is like that. It's not limited government. It's the idea of limited government. It's the idea that you don't care about what the government does because you're libertarian. You're for whatever people want to do. That makes you cooler than other people. This is an absolute dead end. The only available ends. I mean, so what do you have? Between the dying neocons starting their war in Iran, the insane libertarians that they apparently have their head stuck in the sand, and then the followers of Candace Owens. I mean, I like to think that stupidity and insanity have a limit, but I will say this to Red America's great defense. There is a way for it to go. There is a path that it can tread where its interests will be taken into account. It knows what it needs to do. I think deep down, although nobody really wants to say this explicitly, Red America knows where it needs to go. This is something that, and it goes more or less in a nationalist direction. The Republican Party is the party of the American people who are born in America, the American people of the older order that have deep roots, that exist somewhere, as contrasted to the people who exist anywhere, who live in the cities. The only place for this party to go is in a healthy direction. And so although you're kind of surrounded by clowns, I don't really think that there is a problem here. I mean, there is a problem in the sense that we have to overcome the stupidity of sort of the sloppy-lists. I don't even know. I certainly don't feel like I have to deal with Candace Owens, except on the feed. And it might cost elections. And I guess the question is, what do elections mean at this stage, and how are they actually going to play out when it comes to determining America's future? It's amazing how hot this room gets. I can't open the window. I can't turn the fan on because it interferes with the microphone. So I just have to kind of live in a sauna and give the lecture anyway. But this is what I think we're looking at right now. The left in this country is banking on the fact that white America is slowly killing itself. White America, which is to mean what we would ordinarily consider heritage America, is in demographic decline, largely due to immigration, somewhat due to low birth rates. But the left understands that if it can push white America into an early grave, that it has an avenue of about 10 years where it can operate its own political agenda before the coalitions realign and has to deal with a opposing force of some variety or the other. As such, the left thinks that it has time on its side. The left thinks that it has time on its side. And to an extent, they're right. In the very likely event that the left takes back America in 2028, it will be able to undo all Trump's immigration reforms in the first 3 weeks. There are no barriers to it just getting its way instantly. And it will be way easier to import people into this country than it is to get them out once they are in. This is not a symmetrical relationship. And I don't think that Trump's leadership is strong enough to actually stop the left from getting back in permanently. I mean, I don't think J.D. Vance is strong enough to keep the left from coming back permanently. It's not something that is a possibility. The left will get back into power at some stage. And I think that a lot of people, they see this and they say, well, that means that the right has this very, very limited window in which to execute its agenda. And that's also not quite true. Because just as the left has, or the right has a time frame for victory, the left has one too. The left, as we known it, is white progressivism. And white progressivism is dying, and is dying faster then white America is dying. It's dying faster than America is. The left's hold on everything is slipping out of its grasp, and it's really, really obvious to see that. It can't quite control the immigrant populations that it's brought in. It can't quite control the ideology that it's tied itself to. And so just as the Republican Party begins to disintegrate in terms of its demographic hold on something that could be considered an electoral coalition, at the same time, the left becomes increasingly schizophrenic. And one of the great advantages I think that Red America has is that if it somehow is able to steer in between the Scylla of, Candace Owens conspiracy slop and the Charybdis of insane libertarian / pseudo-intellectual National Review brain-dead conservatism, there is a vision for what it wants and what it presents to the American people in the future. It can show people a path forward, and the places where it does rule, the microcosms of its rulership, are actually healthy. That's not the same thing. That's not the case for Blue America. That's not the case for the left. The left is having much more fundamental problems, but certain things are obscuring those problems and making it seem a lot less obvious. Case in point, one of the big things that everyone's talking about right now is the rise of the Democratic Socialists of America, the rise of the DSA. The DSA is just a perfect example of everything that the left is right now in 2026. It is the total embodiment of the left, both in its strength and in its weakness, or in its weaknesses, to be plural about it. The left's great strength is that it's in cities. It's in major population areas. It can organize in a way that the right can never do. The right has a very difficult time centralizing its political power because every cultural epicenter that is in this country eventually goes left. And it goes left because all of the funding apparatuses for achieving and holding cultural hegemony are owned by progressive organizations. And in order to work cooperatively with the unelected federal government, you have to be at least center left. There's no far right organization that works in coordination with elements of the federal government, unless you're talking about the various joke organizations like the Ku Klux Klan that probably literally get money from the federal government via places like the Southern Poverty Law Center to manufacture hate crimes. And there's pipelines in that, but they're nothing compared to the left. All major population centers that deal in some form of accepting grants for art or in executing the responsibilities of pseudo-governments inherently become left-wing organizations, inherently become an extension of that power apparatus. And as such, the left has such an enormous advantage. All of the cultural epicenters are left, meaning all of the creative classes that go to those cultural epicenters in urban areas are exposed to environments where left-wing ideas are celebrated and accepted, and right-wing ideas can only be accepted or embraced behind closed doors. The left also has total domination over our higher education institutions. We train all professionals for 4 years to be leftists. That is the only ideology that is taught in universities. It's remarkable to see any kind of graduate from a soft science or from a liberal art that is not a leftist at this stage, because all of those departments are chock-a-block full of leftists. They are basically extensions of the leftist power apparatus. They are at seminaries. And just to put a cherry on top, all of the new voting blocks that are coming into this country, all of the new non-white demographics, they all skew left. And in all of their mutual hatreds towards white bourgeoisie society, the left has a very necessary agenda. The current economy in its present state, what we call capitalism, although it doesn't represent anything like the economy that Marx described as capitalism. Our current economy is in the process of completely falling apart, and some new deal has to be struck up. The DSA's idea of just taxing money away from the rich under the promise that they'll distribute it to people generally is just a winning political issue that is not going to go away. short of some kind of economic reversal that just is impossible to see. There's going to be an enormous number of people who are out of work. There are going to be an enormous number of people who are effectively proletarianized. And even if they don't have a prospect of getting the money that the DSA is looting from them directly, because let's be frank, all of the money that the DSA loots is going to go to its friends, they nevertheless are not going to be opposed to the idea of hosing the rich, at least as some kind of cathartic gesture to what has been done to the country that they once knew. So the not the Democrat Party, the left in America, like the DSA, like the Democratic Socialists of America, has all of the advantages in its corner. It is the ideology of the urban areas where elites organize. It is the implicit ideology of the university system where we train all professional managerial class participants. It has demographics at its back in the form of a tailwind coming in with new populations that are all sympathetic to the idea of revenge against the old money holders in this country. Really against white people, but we'll say rich people just to be euphemistic about it, like Zoran Mamdani. Although Zoran Mamdani is not always so euphemistic about his hatred for white people. We'll get into that later. And furthermore, you have the perfect plan. You have the plan that everyone wants. The problem, however, the problem with the left, the problem with the DSA, is that it's just composed of people who are absolute messes. The people who are running this party, the people who are creating its vision, the people who are developing its ideology and its plan to educate new people. I mean, I don't know. You see the picture here that's behind me or that's to the side of me right now. This was taken a few days ago at the DSA meeting. Do these people look like your future leaders, the people who you want to have lead you into a bold new future of your country? I mean, certainly not. They look like absolute lunatics or losers or some kind of weird lumpen proletariat people. There's something admirable here. There's something that is heroic here. And the second anyone else walks onto the scene with a vision for what America's future actually might be, they will immediately defeat these people. I mean, these people look less put together than the people who listen to Candace Owens and think that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a Kazakhstani robot or something, or had an explosive like lapel pin on his back or something. They look less sane and less put together than the people who sit at home and watch conspiracy theories. I mean, they're younger, but I mean, they almost aren't younger. I mean, they look like somehow they hit middle age in their late 20s and early 30s. That's what it looks like. These people look like they hit old age at 29. I'm 29 and I'm ready to retire is the profile of the DSA member. That is the image they give off. That's the vibe they give off. And at the same time, they have the majority of kindergartners. I mean, there was this viral video going around in 2019. Maybe people don't remember it. I certainly remember it because I made a video essay. This is back when video essays were still a thing, where it still made sense algorithmically to make them because they would increase the size of your channel. But back in the day, there was this video going around where they were trying to hold a vote. They're trying to hold a vote. And for 15 minutes, the DSA was just entertaining points of personal privilege and points of order, a constant argument over who had the right to speak, whether someone was using gendered pronouns, whether people's crosstalk was impeding on someone's autism and ADD. 15 minutes, again and again. Point of personal privilege, please stop using gendered language. Okay, how about the vote? A point of personal privilege, please stop the crosstalk. Again and again. I think everyone's seen that video. People don't always watch till the end, but the great irony is that they spend 15 minutes addressing these various different points of privilege, and they get to the end when the vote's finally being about to be tallied, where they're going to stick their hands up and actually make a decision. Again, 15 minutes. And then someone asks the speaker, so what is this vote about? And the speaker, who's been trying to call the assembly to order and as a necessary first step of voting, looks at the camera and says, gee, I don't know. What is the vote about? Does someone have that on record? So for 15 minutes, They're arguing over personal privileges about how to vote when nobody in the room seemed to know what the vote was actually about. And look, there was a socialist meeting in Canada where they had a similar little runabout with who had the privilege to speak and when. And every time these people get into a room together, they create the same dysfunction. Because the DSA is not actually a leadership organization. It is a cathartic religion of levelers, and it is a religion of pure revenge. It is something that has been created from a very particular moment in millennial culture, and it has no possibility to survive into the future. If Zoran Mamdani is able to mainstream this ideology and get these people into power writ large, in 5 to 10 years, it will completely discredit itself. Now, there will be another left that will come in to replace it, but that left will be much more along the lines of pure anti-white, pure anti-whiteism, pure revenge. The idea that they're pursuing some kind of noble socialist end. You see people with like the hammer and sickles here, the socialist stuff. That stuff is over. That stuff is going to refute itself the more and more you see the DSA in action. And, you know, more, beyond just that, there's this problem that the left is chopped, as they say. The left is chopped. I don't know a nice way to say this. I don't know a nice way to put this. It is kind of bizarre to see. And I kind of had this clip that I wanted to see if I could play here. I'm gonna see if I can pause this and put this into play here. I'm here to talk to you
about a very important issue.
I do not want
We need more gays in government.
All right, so I guess you're hearing it. So this is Elon Musk's trans son, daughter. I don't know. I don't want to run afoul of the terms of service, and really, I don't really care. But this person has been put in front of a leftist audience in New York City, and now they're really going to make a statement politically. And this is what the left has to offer. You know, it has to offer as its political ideas, and it sounds something like this.
I'm here to talk to you about a very important issue.
Very important.
We need more gays in government.
More gays in government. They need more gay people in government. It's 2000. It will never stop being 2016. They'll never pretend like it isn't the 2010s when this stuff was on its ascendancy. We've heard this stuff a million times before. We saw Joe Biden do it, but we're gonna do this again. But now Musk's child is gonna put a new spin on this that you've never heard before.
We need more gay people. We need them. We need more gay people. And no, not for any admirable reason, like wanting equality or representation or maybe to do
theater could occupy government.
something about the furthering wealth divide. No, none of that. The reason we need more gay people is because everyone is chopped.
I couldn't get over this. Everyone is chopped. Everyone is chopped. Everyone is chopped, and it immediately cuts back to the audience. It immediately cuts back. Everyone is chopped. Everyone in America is chopped, and only gay people can fix it. It immediately cuts to this person. Oh yeah, let's hear from this person wearing the excess thrift store stuff, trying to look 20 years younger than she actually is. Just how chopped everyone is. She's gonna tell us. She's the arbiter of who's chopped. Yeah, see, look, isn't that the person that you want to tell you that you're ugly? You're ugly, says the bleached blonde trans man dressed like Oliver Hardy, except probably with mobility issues. And these are the gays that are going to show America how they can actually, be photogenic again. Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just can't get over this. It's just, who do these people think they are? I mean, just no self-awareness, no awareness of where we are as anybody. doing the same sort of campy drill. I mean, I don't know if you need to watch the rest. If you want to watch 5 more minutes of these pseudo LGBTQ Brooklynites soy jack about how they're so much more attractive than the average American, when they look like the extras from Freaks. I mean, these are mutilated people. They're all transparently old. That's another thing. You look at the audience here. I mean, who is this? Like, how old these people are? These people, these people are in their 40s. I mean, if these people are in their 20s, they look rough. They look rough. They do not look like they've either aged. They're either Zoomers that have prematurely aged, or these are millennials that are desperately trying to look young. It's like the whole trans thing. You know, I can't tell. Oftentimes, sometimes it's very hard. I mean, you can if you meet them in person, it's very easy to tell if this is a woman pretending to be a man or a man pretending to be a woman. But sometimes, especially in these circles, it's hard to tell what direction they're going in. I can't tell if you're a male who's trying to be more effeminate or a female who's trying to be more masculine. All I can tell is that you're this kind of gender goblin blob thing that is somehow thinking that they have the absolute duty to speak over me and talk about the most boring shit ever. And the same thing is true for progressives in age. It's getting at the point where progressives are the same way, like as a class writ large, especially progressive women. Progressive white women in particular, are like this, where I come across a progressive woman and I can't tell if this is a middle-aged millennial woman who's trying to look like she's in her 20s unsuccessfully, or whether this is a Zoomer girl who's actually in her 20s that has, through the process of interacting with leftist politics, aged herself into looking like a middle-aged person at the age of 25. I have seen both specimens, and they all kind of converge onto this strange theater kid environment. Seal clapping, jokes that are not funny, talking gay camp, chopped. Everyone is chopped. This whole thing. I mean, it's funny because you know, if you're an older millennial like me, you remember when this was a thing. You remember when the gay people were the arbiters of what was cool and what wasn't. And when gay people did this shtick in 2003, I think, that was the high point of it. It kind of came back in 2010 to the whole RuPaul's Drag Race thing. But the original one was Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And the idea is that gay people were cool, and the reason why they were cool is they dressed well. This is presented to straight America like I should give a shit about how gay people dress. I mean, no straight person would ever dress the way gay people do because all of their fashion is designed to broadcast their homosexuality in a very non-subtle way. I get that they spent a lot of money on their clothes. I get that they have a lot of accoutrements that make them look like flashy. But the idea that I envied the stylistic choices of gay men in Manhattan was insane. But for a while, this was the line the media was taking. The media was taking this idea that gay progressives or progressives in cities were good, and they were good because they just looked better and they had better style and they had better taste and they had better food preferences. And here was the critical thing. The critical thing was that by embracing this gay culture as, I won't want to say equals because they weren't applying for equality, they were applying for superiority, as we learned later. But by kind of embracing them as luminaries, cultural luminaries, straight America would learn how to look better, act better, eat better, and just have better things across the board. We would just be healthier. If we listened to Dan Savage and Andrew Sullivan, we would just be healthier and more sexually mature, and all of our problems would be solved because we would all become metrosexuals or whatever. This is, of course, silly. As we learned in hindsight, these people don't dress well. They dress silly and pass it off as they dress ostentatiously. I mean, look at this. What is this person that we had back here? Is this person well dressed? just objectively speaking, does this person have good style? The kind of bleached blonde Oliver Hardy gender confusion here. No. If I looked like this at a get together, no one would say that I was well dressed. I mean, first of all, the person's I'm overweight too, right? But this person's very overweight. The jacket does not match the pants. This is a black pants with a gray jacket, and sometimes you can do it if it's like a charcoal jacket, and I kind of mix it up a little bit like that too. This is a really bad mix up because it's drawing attention to the fact that the suit doesn't fit well. The suit doesn't fit well. The tie is way too big, which makes the head look way too small, and the fact that the hair is bleached blonde also draws my eye to that. So it just looks like some kind of weird, like homunculus from Mad Max or something like that that's been stuffed into a suit that's designed for teenagers. And now they're in a comedy show and they're riotously clapping when they say that I'm ugly. And here's the kicker, and this is what kind of made they killed the queer eye from the straight guy. This is not something that can be reciprocated. This is not something that goes out universally. There's no ability. If you were to enter one of these social groups and you were in this comedy club, they can call you chopped. They can call you straight white man chopped or ugly or unfashionable. You cannot say anything back to them. This is a one-way street. You will never call the 40-year-old millennial, striver, I hesitate to say creative girl boss. You'll never call her chopped. You will certainly never call any of the trans people chopped. This is a one-way street where they kind of huck over their own jokes and get high on their own supply while they insinuate everyone outside their little mean girls group is cringe and unworthy of social respect. And if only we had more control over government, we'd be that much better because we could fight the chopped American epidemic. And it's silly because I know where this stuff goes, and we all see where this goes. But you keep on expecting the left to adapt to this. You keep on expecting them to take the next step to kind of I don't know. I keep on expecting the millennial left, my generation, to age gracefully, but that doesn't seem to be possible. They will keep on. The DSA will never get tired of sending 42-year-old obese lesbians to lecture me on white privilege and patriarchy, despite whether that makes any sense. And this is why, despite the fact that if you look at the rise of the DSA and the relative weakness of the Republicans, and the fact that it looks like Republicans are on a much shorter political clock, the left is just much weaker than them. Just the other week, I released an article about, well, it was in some sense a response to Mama Magazine's article on bodega nationalism. Bodega nationalism is this trend that appears in urban areas where they're deeply loyal to their own urban culture, even though they can't stand being an American. So this comes from a variety of interactions that many people have had, including myself, with various urbanites that have lived in places like Seattle or Portland, although mostly and most notably places like New York and San Francisco. Those are the worst areas for this kind of bodega nationalism. And you'll go and you'll talk to these people in interviews, and they'll say something like, "You're not a real New Yorker unless you were born in New York. You're not a New Yorker unless you were born in New York. And if you're not born in New York, you're an interloper. You're a gentrifier. You're somebody who's not really one of us." And that they jealously guard their identity as urbanites. But if you're an immigrant, then you're just as American as anybody else. The second you land on American soil, you're as American as anyone else. but you have to be born in New York to be a New Yorker. You have to be a Knicks fan for at least 20 years before you even dream of rooting for the Knicks in the NBA Finals this year. You have to have the bodega chopped cheese in your blood to be an authentic Brooklynite, don't you know? You can't actually sit on the stoops in Brooklyn or Manhattan, especially if you're white. That's something that's an ethnic thing that's associated with Black Americans. And so this Indian woman is informing the reporter, you can't be a white person and sit on Brooklyn stoops. You're an invader. No, let's not get caught up with the fact that Brooklyn stoops are a variation on architecture from the Netherlands. It's raised housing, because it was these types of buildings were built in the lowlands before where flooding was a constant threat. That's immaterial. But what's most material is the fact that we as city dwellers have this inherent superiority. We have this blood and soil nationalism, and we feel it in our bones. And it is just so hollow. It is just so hollow. It's almost kind of funny to think about it. As the Mama magazine put it, no human is illegal in New York City unless they come from Ohio. No human that's the same as variation on San Francisco. No human is illegal in San Francisco unless you come from the valley, like I do. If you come from a valley, you're like a space alien. You're not a real Californian. What are you doing in the East Bay? What are you doing in Palo Alto? What are you doing in San Francisco? Get back to your bourgeoisie hellscape and in the Central Valley. You this is nuts. This is for high quality people here. It is silly. It is a silly phenomenon, but at the same time, it's just so indicative of this kind of failed urban culture that just seems everywhere in the city these days. As I said in my article, and I'm not going to dwell on this aspect here, although it's kind of the point of my article, Zohran Mamdani understands America a lot better than do the current white progressives that occupy these urban areas and that associate their identities with bodega nationalism. Zohran Mamdani is a conqueror. He wants to conquer America and remake it in his image. And as it looks from the side of it, he will have an opportunity to conquer America, or at least a large portion of it, because the wind is at his sails in a really, really, really critical way, in a way that I can't remember a politician having the wind in his sail. Well, I guess at least since Barack Obama. But he seems, unlike Barack Obama, Zohran Mamdani looks like he might actually have some balls. He might, Barack Obama, I think his great weakness, this is the great weakness of Barack Obama. Barack Obama, he genuinely believed his own bullshit. What prevented Barack Obama from being the transformative character that he really wanted to be, and that a lot of leftists hoped he would be, is that he believed his own propaganda. He thought, oh, well, I'm a president for all Americans. And particularly he believed this his first term. I'm a president for all Americans. And I need to help minorities, helping minorities and helping African Americans, helping the client groups of the Democratic Party. That's my primary goal in government. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, I'm the fulfillment of this dream that America is e pluribus unum. And the problem is that until really the last 2 years of his second term, Barack Obama acted like he was trying to execute a radically anti-white, anti-conservative agenda in spite of his role as a unifier. Then in the last 2 years, he embraced what he actually was just somebody who hated white people, who hated men, white men in particular, straight white men, maybe straight people generally. I mean, if you believe accounts we've had of Obama, I don't want to pull a Candace Owens here, but I think that's a little bit more credible than Charlie Kirk being assassinated by the Jordanians, or the mastermind of evil Erica Kirk. But Zohran Mamdani does not have that misconception. He does not have this confusion in his mind. Zohran Mamdani knows that this DSA, I'm your friendly guy that's going to bring economic justice to the proles. I'm here to make sure that, fat white women who are 20 years older than me can live comfortably in Brooklyn without paying rent so that they can attend comedy clubs where they call other Americans chopped, that only their friends attend. Zohran Mamdani knows that he is not here to help the white PMCs of New York live out their kind of adult playground fantasies. In his heart of hearts, I don't think Zohran's ever let go of the fact that he is a conqueror. He is in it for his own group. He is in it for his own people. And all of this bullshit about democratic socialism is just to get him in the door. He has embraced nepotism, which should, in hypothetical reality, be the opposite of democratic socialism. He has embraced and congratulated himself from using nepotism when it's benefited him in the past. He has no ideological beliefs in socialism. It's not his religion, like it is for these aging millennial women. And for that reason, I think he may succeed in transforming America in a way that Barack Obama wasn't, because he's more purified. He's less hypocritical. He knows what the score is. His goal is to conquer America, not to sell some kind of dream to white people. I mean, increasingly, it's less and less necessary. Increasingly, as it goes on to win Democratic areas or in blue areas, you don't need to have a story about how we are all kumbaya one people. You just need to have the right background that presents you as the enemies of other people's racial enemies. And Zohran Mamdani certainly does that. Everyone knows that the cash cow that needs to get slaughtered and fed to the mob is the giant white cow that is now lumbering off and looking for a place to die. The giant white cow that is white progressive America. It has passed its prime. It is looking for a reason to die. And Zohran Mamdani is just the person to execute the final coup de grace and deliver white America on a platter to the third world as clients that it sold its future to. And that is when the real opportunity arises, because Zohran Mamdani only can rule as long as there is that great white menace in the background. Once that client group is gone, everything in the political formula for the left slowly starts falling apart. And I'm not going to really speculate about what comes after the DSA's ascendancy. I don't think that's particularly relevant. But it is something that's standing in the background constantly. The great opportunity of Blue America is after they hit that event horizon where the people like Zohran Mamdani actually do have all the power, and they no longer even need to pretend that they have some kind of white progressive vanguard that they're ideologically obligated to placate, then immediately the politics of blue areas take a completely different character. In the meantime, we have to actually try to make sense of the crazy environment that Blue America finds itself in. I just think this is what's going on. The story of the death of Blue America, of white progressivism, is the story of death by neuroticism. It is layers and layers and layers of politics as an entertainment product. I mean, in many ways, you see the same thing with Candace Owens. They're more like, what I should say is this: if you go to people in Brooklyn or Seattle and you talk to them about politics, you talk to them about the political narratives of their day, the way they conceptualize their relationship to these things is much more like the followers of Candace Owens and Alex Jones than they'd like to admit. The people who exist in these, I'm really talking about millennials here. I'm talking about people my age. They have a very, very unsteady grasp on their own identities. They do not feel comfortable in their skin. They realize that they are in receipt of a great amount of privilege, that they're living a life that in many ways is better than they deserve. They understand that they're not capable of producing what previous generations of progressives produced. They're no longer the cultural tastemakers. They're constantly beset by this feeling of imposter syndrome. So they embrace these political narratives not because they're true or give you anything, but rather because they have this valence to them. This valence of imperviousness. This idea that the future has been promised to me in a way. And all the great political issues have been figured out. And all we have to do, we know what's right. We have all of the sources on our side. The Academy has our back. And all that is needed is for us to kind of complete the destruction of white America, or the Republican Party, which is increasingly the same thing at this stage. And, but by white America, I mean non-white progressive America. And as long as we complete that, then our inherent correctness will shine through. Every single element of their lives is circling around that same narrative. It's a religious narrative for them. They have a relationship to that narrative the same way that I have a relationship to Catholicism. It's not a political idea. It's not like neo-reaction. It's not like Thomas Carlyle. It's not like Machiavelli. It's not like these people read Karl Marx or they read, John Rawls, and they were just so compelled by the arguments that they had to believe this. For instance, for myself, I've been doing this for 10 years. When I started, I was a liberal, and then 2 years in, I became an anti-liberal because I was convinced. I'd read the anti-liberal authors before, but I thought that liberalism was still salvageable in a multicultural world, and indeed it is not. Progressivism has no barriers to that. And furthermore, I think what's ultimately deadly to it is just how thoroughly dominated it is by women. One of the things I think is very optimistic about the prospects for people who are principally opposed to progressives in the modern world is the fact that, we all talk about this growing level, this growing amount of dissatisfied millennial progressive women that make politics their religion. I think that is really coming to fruition in blue states right now. You see it with this incredible level of neuroticism that inhabits everything that progressives do in the present era. Everything is a reaction. Everything is a negative reaction to a stimulus coming from a right-wing actor or from a non-progressive actor, to the point where everything just feels like it's a constant cope to keep ahead of the curve. That's one of my favorite ones. Has anyone ever seen this comic? This is just, I think this person has children, which is kind of amazing. But I think that I've known about 1,000 people like Pizza Cake comic. First of all, Pizza Cake, it's a variation on, it's sort of funny because I believe that Manchild and Quirk Chungus were a thing before Pizza Cake was at least famous on the right, on the meme making right. But this person basically is the embodiment of Quirk Chungus. And I know so many progressive women like this. Most of them don't have children. And I don't want to comment on this comic creator themselves. But how does the story of Pizza Cake comic go? Well, it's the typical millennial story. So this is a millennial. They're creative. And they start doing what else? What else do you do as a creative illustrator who is who is somebody who wants to make a name for themselves in the age of the internet. Well, obviously, a penny arcade is a thing, so you become a web comic. That's what you do as a millennial. And as you can see, this art style is inspired in no small part by Penny Arcade. You can't miss it. It is virtually the same art style. What do you believe? Like, what is the point of this comic? Well, originally, Penny Arcade is just about quirky inside jokes that kind of have the same essence, the same feel as Reddit does. The XKCD thing. Like, we figured everything out. We know all the serious issues are solved. So all that's left is for us to sit around and consume product, get excited for next product, literally in the case of Penny Arcade. And all of the jokes are just how quirky and silly we are. This goes on for Pizza Cake Comic. The initial ones, at least as far as I could see, were all just her being Quirk Chungus. And then two developments happen. First of all, the author starts feeling like they need to monetize it. And they also feel like there's a great emptiness. Like, this comic is just about me being cute and quirky and everything is going right. But what's wrong in this world? Well, what's wrong, obviously, is Donald Trump. Like many people who felt the sting of modernity, the modernity is not a condition that we're all laboring under. We don't need to find religion. We don't need to find fulfillment in the spiritual or in connection to a larger tradition. We don't need to ask what our identity is, which are all things that people like this are missing. We just need to hate Donald Trump. And at the same time that the religion of anti-Donald Trump became Pizza Cake's actual religion, this creator also introduced a variety of adult content behind the paywall, perfectly embodying the worst decision-making of all millennials. And the second people start engaging in OnlyFans like content creation, at the same time they become massively political, they immediately become the subject of a backlash. And now every single Pizza Cake comic is about politics and about how terrible Trump supporters are. And the problem is that these people just don't understand what politics is and how it should be used. They have no connection to the actual issues involved. They do. I mean, they watch CNN, they watch news programs, they have a Twitter feed. They know the issues. But they have no theory of mind for right-wingers. They have no theory of mind for what it is to be somebody who disagrees with them or why their opponents disagree with them. And I still maintain, if you do not know why your opponent is fighting you, then you do not know the issue. If you do not know why your opponent is fighting you, you do not know the actual issues in play. Or if when you describe them, you come into some kind of bizarre caricature, you do not know the issues in play. And time again, Pizza Cake, along with all these other millennial artists, all they do is develop these kind of self-satirical comics. This one's one of my favorite ones, the one that came out a week or two ago, where she's making fun of men who say, "I'm not political," when they're trying to escape a political conversation with her. And this is just, I don't know if I want to attribute this to progressives or how women think about things. They seem to think that politics has been solved. It's like the XKCD thing. Politics is solved. Like, we know the right answer. There's not a conflict of aesthetic visions. There's not a religious conflict. Politics is just solved. So everyone who doesn't agree with me is just Trotskyist wreckers that are malevolently trying to sabotage us, and they're deeply embarrassed of their beliefs. They're not trying to escape. They're not saying I'm not political because they don't want to talk to politics to progressives. They're deeply ashamed that they're MAGA, and they're using this "I'm not political" thing as a giant excuse. and I can see where it comes from. because certain insecure men do this. They will try to, and I did this myself when I was in college. They try to skirt around uncomfortable political conversations about beliefs because they don't want to conform. And something about the progressive female mind cannot comprehend how you would genuinely break rank in belief from the progressive orthodoxies. They can't even they have no theory of mind. Like, nobody could make this comic. You know, it's this comic where they're presenting people's secret descent as if it is an embarrassing health problem. It's like erectile dysfunction. You know, being a secret MAGA supporter is like an erectile dysfunction that you're trying to hide from your female significant other. It's an embarrassing state of affairs. You know, it's equivalent to being choppada, like the theater kid said previously. It's like being choppada. You know, that's what you're trying to do. There's no way this woman could make a comic like this if she had any idea of what it was like to break with a political consensus of her friend group. I mean, if in some sense, you know, this is a consciousness that is very difficult. And I know I'm kind of crossing my streams here. This is a very female way of perceiving politics, because something about the female way of perceiving disagreement is fundamentally different than that of the male one. And I know I'm trying to make a point about progressives and not just how female brain people think about politics generally. But the idea of a political disagreement is like an embarrassing part of your personality. And if you are, so let's say, you know, and this is something that is very, very strange in female psychology, because I don't think this would happen with men. So there are some things like it's not completely not understandable, right? We all have this range of unquestionable beliefs, like humanity is good, life is better than death, pleasure is better than pain. It's good to live in beautiful places. It's good to have a social life, to have a beautiful life. You know, it's good to have a beautiful life rather than a squalid one. These are all like core human beliefs. Whenever you come up against somebody who's an anti-natalist, the anti-natalism is a great example of this. This is human life is better than human death is so much of a core belief of mine that if I encounter an anti-natalist, I don't want to have a debate with them. I just want to kind of kick him to the curb and be like, this is just disgusting. What are you doing? There's no political way that I could see having this conversation inside polite company, because if I'm debating whether human life is good or bad, then all other conversations, all other objectives that I'm dealing with in my ordinary life become ridiculous. That this is a core religious precept, and furthermore, unlike other religions that are kind of inside what C.S. Lewis would call the Tao, like the broad natural extent of religions, like, you know, Islamic ethics and Confucian ethics and high Brahmin ethics, they don't really differ from Christian ethics that much. You know, there's kind of like a vague family resemblance. Antinatalism is outside that family resemblance. Short of death cults, nobody believes that life is bad and death is good. And extinction of the human race I'm not debating that. That is outside any kind of polite conversation. And I have no way to relate to that other than to shun the person or to behave like women do when they see someone disagree with them on anything. The problem, however, is that there's no bright line, and there's a very big bright line between that and my beliefs about democracy. Like, you know, I'm a skeptic of democracy. If you like democracy, I don't really care. You know, I mean, I don't actually, I think that's something that we could have a very productive debate about. Or even something like abortion. Now, I believe abortion is murder. But people who are pro-choice, I think they're deeply mistaken. I think they are supporting a practice that will be looked back upon as barbaric. But I have enough theory of mind. I understand that these people's support of abortion is not just like a hatred of life itself. They're not just like these embarrassing freaks that are bitter about life and are striking back out against it due to a psychological problem, which is what I might say for opinions that fall outside like the Tao, the general center point of all human ethical systems. There's a bright line for that. Like abortion and democracy and even immigration are things that I think they're very discussable. I think that some of them have very, very obvious conclusions that come out easily in dialectic, but they're not something that is just so anathema that I can't be in the same room with them and I hunt them out like heretics. The same thing is not true for women. Every political opinion is on a journey to being an enshrined religious belief. So, Black Lives Matter happened, Black Lives Matter is at this stage like 10 or 15 years old, right? But Black Lives Matter in 2020 was a 5-year-old movement. I'm not getting my years right. I don't even know when Black Lives Matter came out as a slogan. It was sometime in the 2010s. But Black Lives Matter is the corrupt progressive opinion. And then in 2020, it becomes a religious orthodoxy. And if you don't say it, you are out and we're going to shun you. And you can't ship it with white lives matter or all lives matter. It has to be the complete orthodoxy or we'll shun you. There's no accounting of the fact that nobody believed this 5 years ago. There's no accounting for the fact that this stands in for policies that are really bad ideas. There's this idea in the female mind that every political idea that we discuss is very eminently going to be a political belief that everybody believes, and that anyone who does not believe it will be shunned from the group. This is an extension of female neurotic behavior. Neurotic people have a very negative reaction they have a very large reaction, I should say, to negative stimulus. So they feel attacks on them very, very distinctly, which is why, disagreement is a negative emotion and disagreement on politics is a negative emotion. And they feel these things like daggers. So eventually all right thinking positions have to be solidified as orthodoxies inside a consensus. And so this leads to this idea that suddenly everybody who voted for the wrong candidate or who has the wrong opinion about how we manage borders or who has the beliefs about sexuality that everybody had 10 years ago now is just this embarrassing outcast that needs to be hunted down like the mutant heretic they are, to the point where you make comics like this. And what's so bizarre about, in particular, female progressives is if they ever land on the opposite end of an issue, and the two ones that usually they break from the progressive coalition on are crime and the transgender stuff, both of which threaten their privileges in the orthodoxy that says that crime should not be enforced and that trans women are women. These are giant threats to the safety of women and to the privileges of women to operate publicly. And so they end up opposing them. But this does not trigger a re-examination of how they treat politics generally. They don't go like, well, I'm being called a bad name because I oppose transgenderism. I'm being called a bad name because I want high discretional policing in my neighborhood. Gee, I wonder what that means when I'm being asked to call everyone else Nazis because they don't want to have open borders. That logic doesn't really occur to them because of the fact that they need this consensus-making apparatus to justify their identities. They will never allow for a great unraveling of the progressive orthodoxy because the progressive orthodoxy is their religion, and because that would be such a negative emotion to feel that operating in a mode of pure neuroticism, they just reject it. So their heresy is completely segregated. They never learn how politics works. They never learn how differences of opinion are supposed to be managed. They never conceptualize politics as a discussion over how to govern society. They only conceptualize politics as a religious consensus. A religious consensus that is their job to celebrate and possibly hunt heretics in the name of solidifying. This is a culture that is beyond unhealthy, and you just come again and again to the neuroticism of the blue cities. And what's so funny is They're neurotic. They're paranoid. They are feeling their power and relevance drain away. But every one of their actions, every performance of their bodega nationalist idea that New York City belongs to them and people like them, is imminently being built into a political machine whose primary purpose will be to dispossess them in the places where they live. The only rational coalition that Zoran Mamdani has to take political power in this country is to become the fuck white people party. That's the only way the DSA has its final victory, is to run a class war that's really a race war under the hood. That is, I mean, arguably, that's what communism always does. That's what communism did in Eastern Europe, for sure. Although, you know, there are some instances with the kulaks where it was more class than it was race. But certainly when it came to ethnically cleansing people of my ethnicity, it was just purely race. It's like, you're German, get the fuck out or we'll shoot you. That is ultimately the path to power that these conquerors like Zoran Mamdani will take. And it will ultimately be at the detriment of neurotic millennial theater kids who don't even understand how politics works because they make brilliant comics like this. But this is what I was telling Aaron in our Blood Bowl streams. You cannot avoid the cities. The cities are where it's at. The cities are where power is. And every time I have this, this is a standing disagreement between me and Aaron. It's not resolvable. It's not like a beef between us. This is like the put the woke away argument that Aaron had with Academic Agent. It's designed to be an ongoing contention between the two of us that is very friendly. But cities are not important because they're home to some kind of technology or some kind of function. People have said, oh, the cities were only important because they were where we smelted bronze, during the Bronze Age. We were the only people that could make weapons en masse in the cities, or during the Iron Age. Where the cities are the only people where we have the capacity to make weaponry for our soldiers in the cities. This is a complicated technology. That's why cities are powerful. Or we only need cities because we need to process furs in America. New Amsterdam exists to sell furs to Europe and other goods to Europe. Now that we have cotton, we don't need cities anymore. Or during the Industrial Revolution, cities are only important because they're giant labor camps to run factories out of. Or during the telecommunications revolution, cities are only important because we have to have offices that distribute paper memos, and everyone has to be close together to get the memo, literally. So when the internet comes along, or when cotton becomes king, or when anyone can make iron or bronze weaponry, suddenly cities are over. No one needs cities anymore. These are all bullshit reasons why cities are important. Cities are important because they are cities. They're important because only in cities are people able to form elite classes. Human loyalties necessarily have to be developed in physical proximity to each other. This is the picture here I have. It's Versailles. Versailles was Louis XIV, or I don't know if he was the one who started it, but Versailles and its earlier iterations were the attempt of French kings to solve a problem. As long as the gentry had their own estates, they could rebel against the crown. They would naturally develop different interests as classes, as provincialists, as people who spoke, even in some cases, radically different languages. French was not one language back then. It was the later French kings, most notably Louis XIV, who understood that French nobility will only fight together if they live together. And so he created Versailles. So now all of the nobles had to be in one little city, like artificial city, so they all developed the same mannerisms, so they all read the same books, so they all could be 100% aligned in terms of religion and politics, and they would all see things as one unified class. Cities can create this A large collection of rural areas cannot, and it is because of the city's ability to develop organized elite ruling classes that make them consistently the center point of power. There is no replacement and no technological development will unseat cities as being the focal point of power, while humans are still people who are in charge of the focal points of power. Humans only develop relationships with each other when they live in proximity with each other. And so the cities are always the eternal seat of power. There is no way that you can rule America without unseating the cultural force that currently rules cities. And that is why I think the decline of white millennial culture in cities is such an interesting development. When when the political shift comes on the left and the DSA fails and it transforms into a more third worldist party, a huge swath of the urban population will be politically homeless. Now, this will be minor. This will be microscopic compared to the majority of the anti-progressives, which will all be in rural or ex-urban or suburban areas. But this will be the beginning of something. And I think in some ways it's already begun. You see little pockets of sort of non-progressivism, of non-progressive cultural spaces in cities these days. You see this in Dime Square and the successors to Dime Square. You see this in various other cities. I was just at a talk in San Francisco a few weeks ago. I won't say who was there, but I was talking around to the various people there. Most of them had opinions and views that, well, it didn't make them conservative or right-wing. It made them heretics. It made them definitively not progressive just by being in that circle. And these were very, very elite people. This is developing, and it will continue to develop. There will be a tiny blue spark of insight that creates the next political revolution, and it will start in blue cities. Here, I guess I'm going to kind of change things around a little bit. There is this problem that we have in modern culture, in modern culture, in post-COVID culture. We exist inside this stuck point. This cultural point that's not going anywhere and really can't go anywhere. And somebody said this, someone says, it's the death of eroticism in culture. No one has the lust for the future. No one feels the passion for a plan. No one even feels any sexual passion anymore. Everyone's bored of everything. A better way of putting this is everyone is 40 now. People say this. It was one of my old YouTuber friends was on Twitter. I don't think he has a YouTube channel anymore, but he was saying, what is it with young people these days? They don't like sex. They don't like exciting adventure stories. They don't like movies. They don't like video games. Oh my God, I hate sex scenes in movies. Oh, of course you are. You're 40, even though you're 22. Oh, I don't like movies at all. Of course, you're 40. You don't like movies anymore. Oh my God, I don't like video games. They're not fun either. Of course, you're 40. You shouldn't like them. I don't like music or rock music or contemporary bands or any other kind of music that isn't easy listening to background music or talk radio in the form of live streamer podcasts. Of course you do. You're 40. Everyone acts like they're 40. They all act like they've just lost this vitality. And it is kind of funny as I see it, because it is really the confluence of two forces. The first force is this, I see it really as kind of like this mating point. Basically we're talking about two generations here. We're talking about the millennials, which is my generation, the people who came of age while the internet was just starting. And I guess there's a greater distinction that could be made when we talk about younger and older millennials, aka the younger millennials being the people who went to high school with social media, and the older millennials being the people like me who did not go to high school with social media. Arguably a more relevant difference, but you could also lump in Generation Xers here. The millennial experience is we grew up in the old world before social media. We saw our parents, we saw what social order was when people had friends and there was great music. You had like the Smashing Pumpkins and Radiohead and Daft Punk. Everything was developing. Culture was going somewhere. There was an optimism for the future. And our reaction was, my God, I can't wait to get there. I can't wait to forge a future for myself. I can't wait to conquer this world in my name and make a better world for myself and actually take the reins. And what happened? Well, what happened was a series of setbacks, starting in 2008 with the financial crisis, starting in the 2012s with the Great Awakening, starting and finishing, or I should say continuing, but kind of having a little bit of a capstone placed on it by COVID and the economic crises that COVID inspired, the hyperinflation afterwards, the declining economy, the gig economy, the massive underemployment. All of these things naturally are the reaction of the fact that while we were sold a future as millennials, the great optimism of being at the head of America, there was no real America for us to inherit. All of the institutions were set up for our parents to exist in perpetuity. The 2008 financial crisis happened because we wanted to keep the bubble that was the dot-com bubble going, and we decided to replace a tech bubble in 2003 with a real estate bubble. And then when the financial crisis happened, instead of taking our lumps and going through a reset of the economy and retooling to actually build things, we decided instead to just make another bubble. Another real estate and tech bubble after the financial crisis bubble. At no point did the jobs open up. At no point did the opportunities to rule open up. At no point did the alternatives even open up. It was harder and harder to find relevant culture. And at around 2014 to 2016, the real cultural decline locked in. The old boomers, the Harvey Weinstein generation, started retiring, or really, they started being forced to retire. And when the new hiring practices came in, they kept a bunch of old people and then replaced all of the new positions with client groups. The stereotype of the millennial writer is now no longer some white guy with ideas about what he thinks the future should be like or look like, or who has some exciting vision for a new way of living or a new social organization or a new artistic style. The quintessential millennial writer is the Asian woman. And she's there because she got good grades, because she's a woman and there's not many female writers. And her main ambition is to make everyone aware of her various identities and her various grievances against the people who judged her for being Asian, millennial, woman, LGBTQ. Let's just throw non-binary in there. And the work they produce is some narrative about how hard it is to be an immigrant in a striving family. And it's that again and again and again. And if it's not the Asian striver girl boss, it is some equally kind of self-referential vision that is not a vision. A vision that is just the lifestyle that I have, but put on the silver screen. It is Barbie. It is, I want to validate myself by showing myself to the world and then having the plot validate who I am, because that is what this medium does. This is movies as a form of self-validation, not movies as the exploration of a new world, not movies as the challenging of some kind of interesting idea. This is movies as self-validation, and then maybe to make it seem really controversial, we can attack straight white men for the umpteenth time. Maybe that will work, you know. It's white male privilege, it's toxic masculinity, blah, 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 blah. It's all external to the protagonist. You know, Rey from Star Wars never has to worry about becoming like Kylo Ren because there's no possibility she could be. Because she's a woman. In definition, like Kylo Ren's problems all stem from the fact that he is a white man and therefore bad. In Star Wars, at least the original, there was a sense that maybe Luke was a later iteration of Darth Vader. There's no such threat in that. The protagonist arrives on the scene, pre-confirmed in their positions. But all of this is just a blanket. All of this sort of fake confidence that you see from the theater kids talking about chopped people. It's all the chopped people. It is all an extension of millennial disappointment. Millennials did not get to the positions that they wanted. They were not able to discover some kind of religion that they found fulfilling. And all the things that they had put their hope into turned out to be false promises. The idea of lean-in girl boss professionalism turned out to be unfulfilling. The idea of being a creative class turned out to be imposter syndrome. And coming soon I should say, millennials are about to get disillusioned by their attempts to remake the world in the light of socialism. This is obviously going nowhere, and not because capitalism is so great, but because any replacement for our current system, which is not capitalist, but any replacement for our current debt banking system will have to be done by making definitive decisions about who is a winner and who is a loser, who is up and who is down, where we're actually going as a country, where the incentives are, and what the vision is of a good American life. What is a good life for me to live? What is a good life? Show me what the good life is. And that's why FDR called his plans the New Deal. And people don't realize is the New Deal. Well, the New Deal was a series of government programs that in some ways, and they're the first entitlement programs, like proto-entitlement programs, but we don't call FDR's like the new entitlement programs. We call FDR's new government the New Deal. And why is it the New Deal? Because the New Deal focuses on the man on the street who's got a way to get the American dream. The original one before the New Deal was something like the Fair Deal. I forget who developed that. Was it the original Roosevelt or Taft? In that case, the idea was, the Gilded Age went a little bit too far and we're correcting things. We're going after the trusts and all that stuff. We're establishing unions. But the New Deal was a vision of what it meant to be an American. This is the new idea of what it means to be an American. And not only are you getting a new economic opportunity, we're also inundating you with propaganda about what it aesthetically means to have lived a good American life. When you say, you probably, if you are a regular of this podcast, you will remember the Fiddler Green intro. And I have selected from a period of American art called regionalism. Now, regionalism has earlier predecessors in the 19th century, but it's most known for being one of the art forms that was seriously fueled by the New Deal apparatus. They wanted artists to go out into an America and see what America was and celebrate America in a new way, to kind of present the vision of a new American life, aesthetically speaking, religiously speaking. FDR knew that he was creating a new religion of an American identity. This is what eventually became the post-war consensus. This is eventually what became modern centrist liberalism, the religion of the Democratic Party, well, at least before the millennials took it over, before it became race communism. And in some sense, it was always going that direction. There had been race communist elements of this new vision of America right since the end of World War I. This had always been a component of that vision. But it was small because in the vision of the new economic arrangement was an aesthetic vision of what it meant to be an American. In order for the socialists to recreate the vision of America economically, it would have to come along with a moral and aesthetic vision of what it meant to be a good American. The two things don't work independently from each other. They have to always come in tandem. The vision of the good life in tandem with the good economic deal. It can't just be we're going to rob rich people, really we're going to rob white people, and then give it to our client groups. It can't be, oh yeah, we know you're Quirk Chungus LGBT non-binary poet in Brooklyn, we're going to pay for you to bed rot and attend comedy clubs for the next 30 years because that's what equity means. It can't possibly be that. And those people who you see in modern urban areas, despite how much they go on about the bodegas and the stoops and the Brooklyn pizza and the chopped cheese from the bodega, despite how much they go on about how it is to be a Knicks fan for 30 years, they do not believe that they live anything like a beautiful or good life, for the most part. They know that they're a cultural dead end. They know that they're an aesthetic dead end. And that, more than the economics, is why Zoran Mamdani's vision can't possibly be instantiated. That's why this will be the final millennial disappointment. And as millennials become increasingly disillusioned with corporate success, with religion, with identity, and now with politics, millennials are starting to feel very, 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 very old. Even though we're not that old, I'm probably the oldest millennial there is, and I'm in my early 40s. So, I mean, that didn't used to be old. My father had me when he was 47 years old. 47 years old. He was a child during World War II in Europe. This is not old. I mean, it's not young. It's middle-aged, but it's not old. And millennials are acting like they're about to retire. They're acting like they are completely run out of life. And that's funny because just as millennials are retreating from life before ever having achieved any kind of vitality in their youth, they're retreating from life altogether in their middle age. You have Zoomers that are giving up on life before they even had a chance to experience it. The Zoomer retreat from life. I can't figure this out for the life of me. Well, I can. I'm going to talk about this for the next hour. But it is just so crazy to see Zoomers. I know the economy is bad. I know the economy is bad. I know that the sexual marketplace is screwed unbelievably. I know it's only gotten worse since I left the sexual marketplace. When I met my wife and I got married, I'm no longer on the market. I know it's gotten a lot worse in the subsequent 10 years, but also you guys are 21 and 22. These are challenges, but I'm just telling you guys, there were people your age who went through the depression. I mean, the boomers are full of bullshit when they tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And when they tell you that you can just meet a girl at church, this is an unknown hack, blah, 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 blah. Why don't you just do that? Yeah, the boomers are full of bullshit there. But here's the part where they're not full of bullshit. You are not the worst off generation that has ever existed. And in very few times in our history have 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27-year-olds been as demoralized as I see Zoomers being. They are more demoralized than they should be because they have youth on their side. And so I see Zoomer, I mean, perhaps COVID had something to do with this. Not perhaps, almost certainly COVID has something to do with this. But I see Zoomers these days and they look as old as millennials do. And there's no feeling of romance. And this is what I come back to. And people ask about the death of eroticism. Why don't people have that zest for life? I mean, sure, let's write off the dating apps. Let's just say that you're going to be single until your 30s. Let's write that off. First of all, I didn't get married until my 30s either. And I can't think of a single relationship I had in my 20s that I wouldn't wish away if I were given the opportunity to. They were almost all destructive relationships in my 20s. And despite the fact that I learned from my mistakes, and you never want to wish away your bad experiences because you're wishing away your learning experiences, objectively speaking, they caused more pain than pleasure, and they caused more damage to people's personal lives than benefit that they pulled in. So just write that off. But I'm not talking about eroticism immediately, but the zest for life, the feeling that you can build something. As someone said, whatever happened to romance? Whatever happened to romance? when I was preparing for this stream, and now, this called The New Romantics, so people know I was going to talk about romanticism. Someone said, well, Dave, aren't you the guy who always decries romanticism as being something that's a bad art form? And yes, it is. And, the thing that I always talk about here is anime. And anime is like my number one enemy. And I shouldn't say that. I am, I was talking to Isaac Young, I think it was Isaac Young. And we were talking, no Zoomer wants to drive a car, and it came with the fact that like a car was critical to my development as a teenager, because I remember there was this one time late in high school where I went to being a guy who almost never talked to girls to being a guy who consistently did, because I drove a bunch of girls in my high school to an anime convention. So I was a fan of anime back in the day. Now, the thing about anime was this is Visions of Escaflowne is the picture I picked here. A blast from the past. No one remembers it fondly. Hyper romantic. So what anime is loved. The reason why people like it, the good reason people like it. The bad reason people like it is because it implies that there's like easy sex and easy heroism. It's kind of like a male empowerment fantasy in many cases. But the good reason why people like it, the reason why people gravitate to it the way that they gravitate towards certain 19th century schools of art, is because it presents this very picturesque view of the world, a view of the world where human conflicts are subsumed into very easily discernible narratives. Good versus evil, the magnificence of the world around you, the imperative to fight and conquer a space for yourself. All messiness of life is kind of sorted out. The medium itself disallows it. There's very few, there are awkward moments in anime, but they're all played for humor in appropriate times. There's never awkward moments that derail the plot like they do in real life. And for this reason, a lot of people when they get older, they learn to distrust this kind of romantic perspective on the universe. They don't trust it because they know that it's a fake version of the universe that's designed to kind of appeal to the masculine it's designed to appeal to the human imagination. But just as you see these women who are kind of enthralled by these romantic comedies and these romance novels and these romantic comedies and these Disney movies, they become this barrier to healthy interaction with the real world. Somehow nothing is ever good enough because it doesn't match up to the kind of romance they see in Twilight. And they're constantly pushing their own lives into ditches in pursuit of this romanticism. It is deeply... It's a problem I see on the male side too. And you have to kind of learn how to love reality in its messy state. And the anime protagonists, and this is why I particularly hate harem anime and all this, they present this very, very sticky bauble that is... It's sort of impossible for the male mind or some male minds to look away from. It's an idealized female that is constantly enthralled with just the reality of the relationship, the limerence, as we would call it, of the moment. Elements of reality that we know are sort of ephemeral. And so all the characters in these kind of animes work in these, they psychologically work in ways that are deeply inhuman. They have an adolescent logic to them. The protagonist is always put upon unjustly. They always are pined after by the heroes or heroines, and that's seen as completely appropriate. All of the expectations of the universe are overcome. There is never any awkward failures. And so the characters don't really live in the same life you do and are kind of mocking caricatures of that. And that's not what romanticism is, in my opinion. But that is sort of the bad side of romanticism. It is the ideal that pornographically mocks the real. And, arguably, this is sort of the problem you have to deal with when it comes to trying to come up with vitality in youth. And so I've been really digging down into why Zoomers in particular are so resigned to their own lack of vitality. I've been looking for other channels that have talked about this, and consistently all I get is talk about why we're having a collapse of dating. Now, I guess this is sort of expected because this is expected because we can measure the decline in dating, we can measure the decline of sex, we can measure the decline in men and women pairing up. But I think it kind of paralyzes us. First of all, I mean, we know why this is happening. The reason why there's a decline in pairing up is a few reasons. One is technological. The existence of social media and the existence of video games and pornography of both sexes, both the written and visual variety, provides this kind of simulacra, much like the romantic simulacra of anime, that kind of makes the real world look, by comparison, bad and not worth having. And this is, people talk about it a lot when it comes to men and pornography. It really hits for women, in particular, the social media dimension. The validation and the feeling of specialness that you can get from social media overpowers the validation that women ordinarily seek from real friend groups and the validation women seek from groups of women and men and the attention of men. And because of that, the investment that women want to put into relationships with men are much less. And this is only complemented by the sort of real world reality that we've done everything in our power to disempower and economically disenfranchise men relative to women for the last 30 years. This has been a primary goal of how colleges and how employers have set up, especially their entry-level positions. And as a result, they've created an entire class of young men who are considered categorically unworthy of women from women's own economic preferences. So it's a perfect storm, but this is an understood problem. And as understood as it is, we obsess over it. We obsess over it. And the problem is, I basically outlined the cause of it. The two causes, what are the two causes? Well, I guess I could throw in a third one. The third one is ideological. Women were raised feminism, and they were raised to be feminists, and feminism is just basically a man-hating religion that attributes all negative things to men and furthermore encourages them to ostracize men and to otherwise exclude men for ideological heresies. And since progressivism and feminism are deeply anathema to how most men think and natively need to interact with the universe, basically women are saying, subjugate yourself to my will or I'll never date you. We could go back to the stupid pizza cake comic, not to go back here, right? But just to look at this, like the Quirk Chungus's cringe comic here, this is a great example. Essentially what pizza cake is saying here is, women, please ostracize all men who disagree with you in any way. This is the correct way to do things. And men, if you have an opinion that diverges from mine, you better change that opinion or suffer the social consequences. This is poisonous. This teaches women to essentially be political inquisitors on topics that they don't even understand. And it teaches men that they should sublimate their own desires and own visions for the future to what women want, which is the last thing that you do as a man. As a man, it's your job to have a vision for the future. And the more you sublimate your desires and your judgment to the woman's, the less she will respect you. You could not come up with a better formula for getting men and women to hate each other, ideologically speaking, before we deal with the economic and technological causes, than you could in this very comic. It's calculated to be destructive. So, I mean, in that, you know, to get back to our the problem of the sex and dating recession, as they say, you know, we endlessly talk about the sex and dating recession. We endlessly talk about the sex and dating recession. And look, guys, I've just solved it. I've laid out the 3 causes. 1, technological, the rise of social media, the fact that people's dopamine receptors are bombarded with things that satisfy their need for sex and social cues beyond what they would ordinarily get from real world dating. 2, the economic component. Young men are disempowered, and women do not consider disempowered men to be good prospects for marriage. They just categorically do not. And no amount of feminist blather will ever change that reality, which brings me directly to the 3rd cause, which is ideological, which is modern progressivism has intentionally fed women an ideology that makes them demand not to be matched with men that they would respect otherwise. It either recommends that they date people who are complete simps and who are walkovers and who go along with ideas they know are not wrong and that are subservient to whatever the woman's desires are. You know, people like Matthew Iglesias, or they tell men to steer away from all men who deviate from the party line 1 iota, aka independent men writ large. These 3 reasons for the sex and dating recession are extensive. They basically cover the issue. What's the issue? Why are we still talking about it? Why are all our conversations wrong about this? Well, because none of these 3 reasons why the sex and dating crisis is happening are avenues for the solution to the sex and dating crisis. Now here I'm going to be kind of spicy. I'm going to go after a YouTuber here. A YouTuber that I actually like a lot. This is the YouTuber called Effective Purpose. Now, Effective Purpose is an evangelical Christian who I don't know how to really describe him. He's evangelical. He comes from an evangelical background. He talks like a modern evangelical. It's impossible to miss how he talks. He speaks in Christianese. He speaks with the Christianese inflection, which is really oddly a little bit like the male feminist inflection, where it sounds like he's asking permission to have the ideas he's having rather than just stating the ideas forthrightly. He's always like asking permission. He's using euphemisms for swear words. It's all fine. I love evangelicals. You know, I do a bunch of organizations where it's mostly evangelicals. I hear the Christianese. It grates on me as a blue stater, but I'm fine with it. The Effective Purpose guy is a brilliant video maker. He made a series of videos that outlined the reason for the sex and dating recession that are absolutely masterful, and he targeted these videos at the right people. He targeted them specifically at boomer Christian pastors and boomer conservative leaders. And he demonstrated very well, I may add, why all of their recommendations of just showing up at church and going for the nice church girls and, and being more deferential to their demands and their desires, he demonstrates in no uncertain terms why that's a bad strategy and why that doesn't work. He did brilliant work on those video essays that explain that. But there's a big problem with Effective Purpose's perspective afterwards. And this is where he really falls down. This is where we all fall down on this thing. The problem is that when it comes to solutions, that's the problem. The problem is ideology. The problem is male economic disempowerment. The problem is technology. But none of those things, noticing those trends does not in itself create a solution. You cannot just go up to women and argue them out of feminism. You cannot just go up to a general population and say something like hold women accountable. This is something that I hear constantly on the Effective Purpose live streams, and I always want to pull my hair out of it, out of my skull every time I hear him go on about this. He'll review videos from people like Pearly Things or from TikTok, people who endlessly talk about the dating and sex recession. He'll review videos that are by conservatives and by boomer pastors that give you the typical advice that doesn't work. And then what Effective Purpose will do is they'll circulate around 2 points, the 2 things that he wants to get from the leadership. He has made at least 5, maybe even 10 masterful videos explaining the problem. But then his solutions to the problem are this. We need to recognize the double standard and fix it, hold everyone to the same standard, and then we need to hold women accountable. Women generally need to be held accountable. This is so wrong. This is so entirely wrong. It plays into the frame of the problem to begin with. There's no way you can do any of these things. The double standards exist for a reason, because men and women are different. They think differently. They interact with politics differently. They interact with their emotions differently. The double standards are there for a reason, and in many ways, when you attack the double standards, you're attacking an emotional instinct that is right-headed in its motivation, if not in its application. Our situation is perverse, but the double standard is real. And one of the main consequences of the double standard is that women are not, generally speaking, held accountable for decisions that they make that do not violate explicit rules. If a woman is not violating an explicitly pre-stated rule of your religion or faith, then she's generally speaking not accountable. Or another way of putting it, women are not accountable for what they don't do, and they're not accountable for not taking ownership over situations. If women do nothing, they just remain completely inert and say no to everything, people will not register that as a failure or a shirking of responsibility. That is in women's prerogative to reject the world and deny the world and let the world pass them by. And trying to hold women accountable for not taking ownership of a collective problem or a political problem is kind of insane, but is not as insane as Effective Purpose's next real problem with his solutions. If any of these solutions are going to be solved, they're going to have to be solved politically and at the level of male action. And furthermore, they can never, ever, ever target the general woman. This is what I call the general woman. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. Anytime you're talking about women in general or collectively, you're usually making a mistake. I mean, you can talk about women in general the way I did. When you're talking about how they behave statistically, I wrote a whole article called Ride the Female Brain Egregore, where I talked about how female-brained individuals process politics, which obviously there's a lot of men out there that are female-brained as well, and there are some women who are male-brained. But you can talk generally about how women behave. You can certainly talk about how women's psychology and role in society contributes to problems. You can certainly talk about how this has caused the dating sex recession that is the subject of so many think pieces. But if you ever talk about solutions and you refer to women generally like a class, immediately stop yourself. You're making a mistake. Women will generally do nothing. You ever heard that phrase, people will not just, if only people just were good, if only people were just caring, if only they were just generous, if only they were all good people, then the problem would be solved. And then the response is, well, people will not just. Well, that applies doubly to women. Anytime you're referring to women collectively in any regard, you are making a mistake. Occasionally, you can refer to certain kinds of women like radical feminists as part of a political group that you're trying to eliminate. But even then, no solution has ever started with referring to women generally as a political actor. The female egregore cannot be seen as an object that has agency. It is not a proper subject for that. And the more you treat the female collective psychology as something that has its own psychology, the more you will lose. Now, the big paradox is, in some critical way, the female collective imagination does have kind of a personality to itself. There is a female collective consciousness that causes problems, but no solution can ever begin with directly interacting with it. It always starts with walking through it or routing around it. And the more you pay attention to the general woman, the less you will solve any problems. The general woman will never be held accountable. The general woman will never operate under non-hypocritical principles. That is not something the general woman does. Furthermore, any attempt to individually resolve your dating woes, to find a spouse, will never be solved by regarding women generally as a class. Whatever you do, do not try to placate women generally. That's not how it works. The way you find a woman to marry and love is to focus on a specific woman. And her specifics are the reason why you pursue her, and her specificity is what you try to serve, not women in general. The more you feed your effort and time into placating the women in general category, the more you will lose. Another way of putting it, the general woman will never be accountable because she is woman, and woman by definition is a non-owner in political circumstances. Women can take political actions. Women are sentient human beings. They can make political moves. But the woman collective is never accountable, and women will do anything in their power not to take ownership over a situation because that makes them vulnerable. The general woman will never be accountable because she is woman, and the general woman will never be romantic because she is general. So no solutions to the dating and mating market will ever be brought about by regarding the general woman. To solve it, you have to walk through the female egregore and take power and take resources and make political reforms and make changes directly. You route around, so you either go through it by taking power, you go around it by making your own thing or a parallel tract, or you ignore it entirely. Anything else is a waste of time. And to solve the specific problem of finding a woman, you have to focus down. You cannot be obsessing over statistics that show you how bad the situation has gotten. That will paralyze you. Guaranteed paralyze you. It will guarantee paralyze you. Ultimately, all of this comes down to a misunderstanding of the problem of romance. And again, by romance, I do not mean simply sexual interests, or what do they call it? Eros, or satstorge, or amour. Eros or amour, or the feeling of limerence. Not that exactly. The problem of romance is the problem for feeling a certain vitality in life. And that is not a function of sex directly, and certainly not a function of pursuing it directly. There is a reason why millennials and Zoomers are feeling old and not very vital at this time. Part of it has to do with the declining salience of relationships, but more permanently, the biggest problem that millennials and Gen Z are suffering from right now is they lack a sense of place. They lack a sense of place. They lack a sense that we live in a fleeting, beautiful moment, in an environment that itself is a romantic place. You know, we exist in a very particular historic moment where great things are possible, where actions can happen, where exciting things can happen, where the new thing might be decided, where a new institution might be created, where a change might actually occur. And it's not necessarily a big change that will sweep the world, but something that will impact the lives of everyone who's in that place and in that time. Now, obviously, the lack of place, this is a direct result of social media. Everyone's always like, get off of podcasts, get off of podcasts. I'm like, I totally agree. Get off podcasts and social media, but I think I do a pretty good job. I think that I actually provide utility. And look, by all means, come to some of our real life events. I think that if there was a mission, obviously this is not the direct mission of things like the OGC, but it was part of the inspiration. We need to break down the barriers between who we are in the social media space and who we are in real life. And we need to start making the real life space the core, because it's only in the real life space that the real relationships can be forged and that a new elite can be formed, a new elite that actually gets things done. It's only in real places that romance can happen. It's only, I mean, it's the situation, it's the situatedness, it's the territorialization that is stopping any kind of solution for the sex and dating crisis to ever really be proposed or follow through. This is why boyfriends can be embarrassing. Remember that? I mean, there's these articles that appear in the New York Times and prestige media every 6 months. It's either heterofatalism or are boyfriends embarrassing right now? Well, that's great if you're in a group chat. Boyfriends are turbo embarrassing in a group chat because they cut down on your ability to complain and participate in the current thing in the group chat. Boyfriends certainly aren't embarrassing in real life because boyfriends get things done. Boyfriends open doors. Boyfriends provide security. Boyfriends provide a future. And that's what you see in these millennials, these millennial women doing these comedy clubs where they cackle about everyone else being cha-pa-ta. You see people who don't believe they have a future. And all they have is these present fascinations and echoes and in group chats. And that's because they don't really have a place. They have a bunch of affectations. They have bodega nationalism. They have this as an identity of them being a Brooklynite or a Seattleite or whatever. But it's not real. It's not something that they feel has eternal salience. And really, it doesn't have a feeling to it. It doesn't have a place where it all occurs. And I think that Zoomers really need to look at this hard, because this is really where they fall down. I hear people, oh, I don't own a car. Where would I drive? I don't drink. I don't want to be drunk and embarrassed. People take a picture of me on social media. I don't want to learn jokes. I don't want to learn how to talk to people in an approachable. I mean, do you remember jokes? I always make a habit. I can't always pull this off because I ran out of jokes. I've done 10 conferences and I've told about 10 jokes, and those are only ones I really think are very funny. But I always made a habit, at least up until this last conference, of beginning my speech with a joke, because I want to be the kind of person that tells jokes. Jokes was one of those things that didn't have points to them, but they were part of being a pleasant person to be around. You talk about developing a sense of humor to a lot of Zoomers, and they stare at you like, oh, I'm not going to be your jester. I'm not going to dance around. You know, what is this thing here? Where's the picture here? Yeah, this one here. You bring it to Zoomers about how they should be developing a repertoire of jokes and humor and the ability to kind of jostle with people in a playful way, to exert a kind of effortless confidence. And they look at you like you're expecting them to be the dancing jester in front of the princess. No, I'm trying to get you to treat the place you are currently as something that's more valuable than the abstracted version of your brand that exists hypothetically, not even as a real thing. I mean, I need to have some idea that you're coming around to the reality that we all share and that there is some value here. Otherwise, we're not really developing a relationship, are we? Here's what I say to Zoomers. You don't need a car, but you need to have a place to go. I mean, look, I don't have a car because I'd much rather take the bus. I lived in Seattle for like 5 years. I barely used the car at all. I used the car to go to like Walmart. And other than that, I took the bus all the time. That's fine. But the reason to have a car is not to have a car as a status symbol. It's not to drive your parents around. You have a car. The reason why people wanted to have cars is because there were physical places and physical events that they were going to, that were important to go to, because they were the basis of your ability to form relationships with people who were actually undertaking projects that you believed in. And if you didn't have a car, you couldn't get to those places where things were actually happening. If you're a guy without a car who doesn't know how to drive a car, I don't really care. But if you're a guy that doesn't have anywhere he needs to go ever, because nothing is actually going on in the real world where something is going to change to make the world better, then that starts telling a story. Same thing with alcohol. You don't need to drink, but you need to be making toasts. I mean, seriously, when was the last time you made a toast? Even in the conferences that we run, I still have a hard time getting young people to actually do the toast. I've even tried to develop my own little OGC toast. In one of my speeches, I tried to put forward one, and it was, I don't know if it was very well received, but it is something that I'm trying to get people in the habit of doing, because getting people together and putting the glasses together and saying a toast is one of the critical aspects. It's like we're looking forward into the future with optimism. That's what the toast is. That's what the breaking of bread represents. You don't need to have alcohol. You can be like the Mormons and do it with root beer if you need to, but don't drink absinthe, but please be making toast with people. Please have an environment where that is something that you can do. You don't need to be a jester. I spelled two times there. You don't need to be a jester, but you need to be making jokes. And it's the same thing, right? You have to be a territorialized individual. Romance does not begin with sex. Romance begins with location and embodiment. And this is, I think, the thing that the Romantics themselves understood. When we look at romantic paintings from the actual Romantic era, it started going a little bit off the rails with the pre-Raphaelites, where it looked like it was a little bit, I don't know how to put it. I don't want to say pornographic, but it was, some of them felt a little bit lurid, like they were heading in a direction of being voyeuristic. But the real feeling of romance was best captured in the depictions of landscapes. It never got, and maybe people sitting before landscapes, like in the famous Caspar David Friedrich's school. I think this is the Hudson River Valley School was another one that was really, there's Caspar David Friedrichs was good about this too. The great landscapes that you were setting out to live inside of. This is a particular moment in a particular place, and your will is engaging with this moment. No matter how fleeting it is, you are the person who's enacting their will on the landscape, and you are going to change it. That is the essence of romance. And that is what people respond to. This is what women respond to. This is what generates excitement. I think as we really understand it, this is the real critical opportunity that we have right now. The internet's kind of dying. I complained about YouTube at the beginning of this stream. I wasn't joking. I mean, I really do enjoy these lectures, and I think that a bunch of people do enjoy them. They like to hear me ramble about a topic with slides for 2 hours or so and answer questions afterwards with super chats. It's a lot of fun, but YouTube is broken. YouTube is a dying medium. Substack is definitely not broken. It is an amazing way for me to get my ideas out there. It's way better than YouTube in terms of getting essays, but at the same time, it doesn't generate growth. It is stagnant. Substack it's kind of weird, right? Twitter and YouTube, they feed the algorithm to keep people using the platform, but the quality degrades. And so eventually people burn out, and it has this big churn attached to it. Substack is the exact opposite. Substack is we're going to put you in contact with just the people that you like and then keep you in your little echo chamber eternally, right? We're going to keep you in your little echo chamber, bouncing back and forth, and you're not going to read anything that you don't like. And this is going to make it so that you don't really grow ever. But at the same time, your writing always feels fresh and well received. And your own little micro business model continues on indefinitely. It's like frozen in this moment of health. But the internet is dying. People are reterritorializing. What's going to define the next era of the internet is the internet that can be used in connection with people who are actually doing things on the ground, people who are living lives, people who are embracing the true idea of the romantics. Engaging with the moment you were given, engaging with the place you were given, is radically seizing it, like the Hudson River Valley School or Caspar David Friedrichs, the man standing on top of the mist, the youth looking into the horizon with the ships with the sun setting behind them. The picture I have at the outset, the youths. I'll go over that one. Yeah, we can just do it now, I guess. I really like this one. This is my favorite painting from Caspar David Friedrichs. These are youths at the cliffs of Rügen, I believe. It's this region in North Germany. And I was always fascinated with this picture. Young people basically creeping over to these giant white cliffs that just fall down right into the Baltics. The Baltic Sea, or is it at the Baltic? It's not the North Sea yet, I don't believe. But this is just on, I believe it's the east side of Denmark. And when I went to Germany, my greatest memories was finding this location and walking out to just where the cliff dropped off. And it's really weird because it drops off quickly and you're afraid that you're going to pile over, as you see in this drawing. And I felt that, it was just had turned 22 at the time. And it felt like at these cliffs, this is the moment where I become an adult and I seize the moment. That is the feeling of romance. That is the true feeling of romance, the feeling of embodiment, the precious fleeting nature of the moment, and the imposing grandeur of the landscape itself. The internet can't contain that. The internet dissolves that energy, and that's the energy that has to be recaptured. And we don't really have tools to deal with it. I think that, look, since you've been listening to me for the last 5 years, since the end of COVID, I have been pushing any number of in real life organizations. Sildings, the Basket Weavers, Beowulf, OGC, the Exit Group, New Founding, Ridge Runner. I could just go on and on. I even have a big link tree that I run off of the Redwood Society, which is the one that I actually run, and that you can see all of the organizations that I participated with and that I can wholeheartedly endorse. It's a living document. I try to keep it updated as much as possible. You don't need to hear that from me. We're trying to do it. We're learning from our mistakes. We're taking steps forward. But I think that it is yet really to percolate. The attitude has yet to really percolate into how we use social media. We have to be looking at social media entirely differently. We have to be looking at social media as an extension of our grounded human realities, and not just talking into the ether, as if the ether is going to reward us with more ether points. And this is something that, my too many Isaacs, but this is Isaac Simpson's project. This is a thing called Mama Magazine. It's a little bit parasitic because Isaac was sort of inspired by me and I'm inspired by him. And it's, we talk about our ideas in turn. But I think that the work he's doing with this, and who knows, maybe it will fold and it will reemerge as something. But Mama Magazine, in Isaac Simpson's conception of it, was this idea that they would rediscover the energy of the weekly magazine. The weekly magazine for myself, I wrote an article about this on Substack. For me, it was always the Seattle Stranger. You'd go outside to the scene, you'd see whatever was going on, some performance or something that was happening that was important, and then you'd pick up the stranger and see what was happening later, and there would be opinions mixed into that. And in the last few articles that Mama has released, they have just been hitting them out of the park. As far as I'm concerned, look, I like doing think pieces that are totally abstract, and I'm not going to stop writing them. But this kind of gonzo attitude is what we need to be striving for. And one of the people, I am, hold on, guys, a minute. I need to attribute this to the correct author. So pardon me where I looked this up. The last, Denzel Rust, he was the guy who wrote the Mama article about bodega nationalism. And he said that the editorial board of Mama magazine has two adages that they always put front and center to their writers. And this just needs to be internalized totally with how we produce content in the modern world. I don't know how Twitter is going to do this, but we need to internalize this. The first rule is no complaining. Brilliant. I'm so tired of hearing people complain about problems. Now, I'm not saying don't notice problems. I'm not saying don't talk about how the social order is declining, how the economy is this giant tower of matchbox that's ready to go up in flames and topple over simultaneously. I'm not saying don't point out all the manifest ways that our leaders are corrupt and that we need change, but talk about them, notice them, grapple with them in an active way. This is what we're doing inside of it. This is how people are reacting to this crisis. Don't make the mistake that, effective purpose seems to constantly make. Don't sit around going, gee, guys, it's time to hold women accountable. Gee, guys, I wish people wouldn't have these double standards. Or to take one, this is one way that I've complained a lot in my blog. Gee, guys, I really, really wish we had a competent right-wing patron class so that we could get artists funded. Wouldn't that be nice? I don't want to hear about that. No one wants to hear about that. That's a complaint. I complain. Lots of people complain. When I say that I want a right-wing funder class, I am not giving you any useful information for action. I am just complaining that the world isn't the way I ideally would want it to be. The real article is struggles producing art in a limited funding, in an environment that has limited funding. That is the active way where I incorporate the problem as part of an active effort to address it. Or seeing what people are doing to produce art, seeing what people are doing to actually solve the problem, seeing how people are reacting, reporting on it, noticing things, noticing how the problem is changing. Anything but constantly revisiting the same set of grievances, because putting your grievances into the ether is not going to solve them. We have established that. It's an insane to believe otherwise. And this is sort of brings me to the next Mama writing philosophical point that Denzel Rust brought up, which is always be alpha. And this is the worst title. I hate this. If I were to say this in Silicon Valley speak, I would say always be n equals 1. Always be the first iteration of something. Sure, I write about gender slop. I write about the sex wars. I write about the political crisis. I write about progressives. But in everything I write about and do, there's always a dimension that I feel no one's done before. I'm actively introducing something that is original and contributing. I'm not just rehashing the same thing over and over again. And, I think that all good content creators strive to do that continuously. And more even than that, a component of always being alpha is engaging with the actual real world that is the inspiration for the problems we talk about. If there's an event going on, go there in person. I was just at, like I said, an event in downtown San Francisco. I have a hard time going to those things because I have a kid and lots of family responsibilities and a 50-hour-a-week corporate job that pays the bills. But just the act of going and doing and getting your hands dirty with what is actually going on in your place, in your time, makes whatever else you're writing about alpha. It makes it the first of one. It makes it alpha in terms of software. This is the first kind of thing that we're doing. We're engaging with reality at its most raw and immediate level. because that's only the way that you can really be the romantic, to capture the new romanticism. You have to have a mode of presence, and you have to make a scene. You have to attend a scene. This is something that Isaac Young, again, not too many Isaacs. Isaac Young is the author. Isaac Simpson is the editor of Mama Magazine. Both great guys, both friends. But to kind of thread the needle between Isaac Young and Isaac Simpson, Isaac Young put to me this problem of how do we create a tastemaker class? This is a little bit of a trick question because I intimately know how this process was done in the old world. Tastemaker classes are networking opportunities, essentially. You have one group of people who is a consumer of your product and who's interested in whatever you're producing because it's exciting and it leads to a better world, and it feeds the kind of people that they want to become. It is the thing that is the next logical step in their path, in their aesthetic vision, in the development of their aesthetic vision for the future. And you connect them with the people who are looking to create, that are looking to push in new directions, who are looking to be the n is equal to 1 or n is equal to alpha, if you borrow the MAMA terminology for it. And you bring them together in a scene. So, I mean, case in point, Isaac Young is an author. And I don't have to speculate about how you mint new authors. I know, because my parents owned a used bookstore, and bookstores always know this. There are local authors. They never published a book before in their entire lives. They might be like 40 or 50 or 60. It could be 60 or 70, actually. A lot of boomers were in this situation. They were tired. They make a book. Everyone, and then as a community service, the bookstore promotes the book with a party and a release and a speaking event. And this benefits everybody. The people who like books get to come and feel important, like they're part of people who are actually developing arts and letters and culture. The author gets to feel like they're the toast of the town. Always be toasting, always be joking, always be having a place to go. They're now the toast of the town, and they also sell books. They are now an established author. And the establishment, the people who makes the scenes, gets to be the facilitator. They get to be the person who's known for making things happen. This is how you create a taste-making class. Now, for us on the right wing, this is very difficult because we do not own institutions that do this yet. We have components of them, but they're not developed yet. And furthermore, when it comes to books, when it comes to genre fiction, we do not have a group of people who's geographically concentrated or who is very ready to come out for a consumer product. We would have to develop this. One of the big setbacks we've had in this scene is developing, or in sort of post-liberal, post-leftist, right-wing dissident groups, is that our ability to organize or host events built around cultural products has been very limited. We have not been able to pull that off properly yet. But I think that it starts with just knowing how to make a scene and attend a scene. Rediscovering the aspects of being people in public spaces. Always have public spaces that you're going to. Force yourself to go to public spaces and be yourself inside of them. And then know how to kind of build the public space. The public space is a space where you are creating a story about yourself and the people there that is optimistic and that embraces the future. And really, the alcohol and the jokes and the toasts and the cultural products really just kind of facilitate that optimism about the future. A scene is about security. A scene is about walking into a room, and it could be the worst world imaginable on the outside, but in that room at that time, You feel like you're masters of the world. You feel like the future is being forged in the conversations that you're having and the prospects that you're talking about and the hopes that you're pointing to. In many ways, it's the exact opposite of that horrible comedy troupe. A scene is not a place where you pat each other on the back and seal clap each other's jokes. You want to help each other out. You want to validate each other, but you're not just clapping so that you can get validation in this masturbatory way. You are actually looking beyond yourselves to something that's greater. In some ways, a properly run scene is a social note of anti-neuroticism. It's breaking out of the desperate need for self-affirmation and discovering there a mode of exploration. A scene is a mode of exploration, and a scene is a mode of internal security. And of course, neurotics are the exact opposite way. Neurotics discover nothing because new things challenge them and they don't like negative experiences, and it's totally inwardly focused and self-congratulatory. A scene, a proper cultural scene, is an inversion of the neurotic self-appreciation society. And an embrace of the horizon. This is what people don't understand. And, people say, oh, Dave, you're the biggest anti-romantic. And, I distrust the romanticism of anime. But I will forever say that Thomas Carlyle helped me appreciate romanticism. G.K. Chesterton probably channeling Thomas Carlyle, because I know Carlyle was one of his early influencers, helped me understand this. And Carlyle said it better. The journey of the embrace of life is the journey from the everlasting no to the everlasting yes. And the everlasting no is the rejection of the world because of the disappointments that the world naturally gives you. It is a flawed universe, therefore one retreats into oneself and closes oneself off to the possibilities that exist on the horizon. The everlasting yes is the embrace of the moment, the embrace of the place, and the place as it meets the moment in the horizon. The horizon is where your location meets the passage of time, which is why the romantic paintings of Caspar David Friedrichs are always looking into the infinite, emerging horizon. I don't like saying Faustine. It's almost, I should say it's Goethe. It's Goethe's style that Thomas Carlyle absorbs and puts into something like Sartor Resartus and his other novels. This is the embrace of life. And this is the embrace of the new romanticism. Finding that thing that makes you hopeful for the future and walking into it, and finding the people who are willing to undertake that mission with you. And I think with that, we can indeed be the new romantics and discover something that is better than this decrepit moment that we are experiencing in repeat on social media. Well, guys, that's the end of the lecture portion of the podcast. I guess I will do super chats. I don't know if I can present them, so I will just read them. I still don't have... There's an overlay chat. Interesting. The question is, how much do I want to fiddle with this to get the chats to actually appear on the screen? I'm not so sure that I do. I wonder if I could just grab them this way. It would be interesting if I could do that. Well, bear with me, guys. Maybe this will work. Bear with me. I know that it's really uncomfortable to have silence, but I was so busy setting up the microphone that I did not have a chance. Okay, here we go. So if I go up like this, will it actually go up too? No, it won't. Okay. I'm afraid we're SOL on the super chats being depicted in the actual screen in a way that anyone could read them. I will, however, because I can't show the super chats, I will read them as best I can, make sure that they're clearly stated, and give you as long an answer as I can possibly give you in the time constraints I have to do this podcast. So thank you very much, and I will work to get this stupid plugin to work in the future when I actually have a moment to fiddle with Chrome. I really hate. I should just use StreamYard. I should change from Restream to StreamYard. I think it might be a better situation to do Google Super Chats in. But although I wonder, I am on. It's just tantalizing to think that I might be able to fix this. But if I went to Restream.io, would it show my Super Chats here? It's a very interesting question. I guess not. I'll have to examine this for the future. Okay, guys. So I'm going to go just read the chats straight from YouTube here so that I can be sure to get all of them. There we are. And we go to Super Chats. And here we go. All right. Bobby Bob for $50. Thank you very much, Bobby Bob. He says, can you address quickly the lack of male mentorship for Gen Z? I noticed that there's one from last time that I didn't read, so I feel like I'm obliged to read it now, Bobby Bob. I'll return to your $50 super chat. But two super chats that looks like I did not get last time where Waspy Synth says, thank you for your dedication, Dave. Thinking of converting to Catholicism because my Anglican church is geriatric. I feel like a church shopper. I think I might have covered that one last time. And then Darth Calhoun for $5 says, hey, Dave, just wanted to chip in, flying to a family reunion right now, and I will watch later. Thank you very much. But now I will get to Bobby Bobs, who says, can you address quickly the lack of male mentorship for Gen Z and what we can do, especially for those who do not have decent fathers? Well, okay, this is interesting. Are you speaking as a Gen Zer, or are you speaking as a millennial who is trying to mentor Gen Zers? I'm going to assume how you ask that you are a person who's a Gen... Oh, I'll answer it both ways. It's a very generous super chat, so I'll answer it both ways. This is difficult because I think that mentorship can only really exist in real life relationships. I think that it's very challenging if you try to take it outside that context. Now, for a while back, people were really into Discord, and I had some relationships with people that I felt were kind of like, I am mentoring this person to be a YouTuber, or like they're a fan of my content and I give them personal advice. When I became a father and got married, it became much harder to do that. So at this stage, I feel like the mentorship relationship really should take place in meat space, in the real world. And for that, I think that we just have to start developing places where men can meet together. Gen Z is difficult. It's difficult because we can't get Gen Z to go to physical locations. I guess it's not entirely their fault that what they tell me that there's no good places for them to go to where they can find a place to have a reason to be social and a reason to interact with the world as such. But I don't see how it continues without that dimension. We have churches. If you're a member of a church, there's a huge influx of young men. You have to make sure, if you're an older guy and you're part of a church body, that your church is not sidelining those young men because they're unmarried. Most young men these days will struggle with female attention because female attention is entirely sucked into social media. And these spaces that are operating to shut down all social interactions that do not conform to female group chats. If you're a Gen Zer, well, I should say, in addition to churches, if you are an older guy, if you're an old head like myself, if you're an old guy like myself, participate in church socially. Try to join a fraternal organization that works with young people And by young people, I mean in their mid-20s, not people who are teenagers. If people are in an educational system, just wait till they get out. We're talking about mentoring adults here. People who have got through their education and are dealing with the real world and are either in employment or in grad school or in some apprenticeship program. Join a fraternal organization, see where the young men in your community are hanging out. If you do something like a nerdy board game, I've known a lot of people who've played things like Magic the Gathering, and then they've also gotten the guys there to go hiking or start lifting weights, or got them into actual literature. Use your hobbies that are indulgent or that are otherwise useless and kind of put a little of medicine in that spoonful of sugar. By contrast, if you're Gen Z, you've just got to force yourself to be social. You've got to, I know it's hard. I know that there's no places to go that are as good as they used to be before COVID. I know everything's fallen off, but you got to look around. There's a book called The Area Operator's Handbook that I talk about constantly with Kevin Dolan. And he talks about finding out the resources in your local area and what you do in an emergency situation if those things were destroyed or incapacitated. And we're talking about taking it in an entrepreneurial direction. Do the same thing for yourself. If you're a young guy, do an area operator's social circle. Like, figure out what are the social outlets in your area that are in easy driving distances. The gyms, the game stores, the bookstores, the places where people see movies. Find the areas where people do things together socially that are in your areas, that in particular where men do things. The parks where people play games, and then find a few things. Find sports, find games, find cultural events that people do. If people are a little bit older than you, that's fine. If people are my age and you're 20, that's a little bit of a stretch, but you're on the same wavelength. I would probably stay away from the stuff that is absolutely geriatric. The disconnection will be a little bit too brutal there. But just find at least 3 things that are social, real world events that are done for a purpose that is outside yourself, and walk into them and develop relationships there. Once you develop the habits to build those relationships, the rest of the stuff will fall into place. Or, it won't just fall into place, but you'll have made a big, decisive first step to dealing with the problem directly. Let me move this over here so it's a little less distracting. Okay, going on to the next super chat. Compy Sai for $5. Your videos always give me hope for the future. I'm a postdoc now and was wondering if I should join the OGC or if it's too risky for my career. Well, I'm part of the OGC and I work a corporate job, so I don't think it is. But I need to add a disclaimer for the OGC that's gotten a lot of people bent out of shape, okay? There is not just one OGC. The OGC is an umbrella organization for a bunch of little chapters that all have their own standards for who gets in and who doesn't. There are OGC chapters that would not have me as a member because they're exclusively comprised of people who are heritage American. And that's fine, but they're still under the umbrella of the OGC. You can have an OGC chapter that's local to you that's just not a good fit for whatever you're doing. Maybe you're not interested in whatever their agenda is. Maybe you're interested in going in a different direction than they are. It depends. So if the OGC chapter in your area is not to your liking, you can look into other organizations. Don't just have that not fit for you and then give up on the idea of organizing. There's basket weaving, there's exit group, there's all sorts of things that people do on the side, new founding, there's tons of organizations. And even if your local OGC group is not to your taste because they have different religious views or different ideas and what their group is about, you can just form a new chapter of the OGC as long as you have 5 other people who are willing to sign up. I don't think things could change. Right now, it's a low point for doxing risk. And if you have a competently run OGC organization, then you guys will know how to handle your optics discreetly. The OGC is not supposed to be for people who are doing things that get people fired. It's supposed to be people who are taking actions to improve their community, to improve the celebration of American heritage, and to plan for proper governance in the future and proper development of culture in the future. And for that reason, I think that the OGC is a pretty low risk. And obviously I believe that because, you know, I'm in it. And I have a PhD, and I kind of did a postdoc myself, and you know, it is what it is. It did not cause me any problems. I mean, really, look, if we have another 2020, people are going to be coming after all of us, and we're going to have to learn how to stick together. And that's going to be the reality we have to deal with, and we have to be mature about that. There's no future scenario I see where we don't have to take risks like this. We have to hang together, or we all hang separately. Maybe OGC is not the best fit for you. Maybe your local OGC chapter is not a good fit for you. I keep on looking for organizations that are a good fit for you if that's not the case. Oops, I realized I couldn't click on that like that. Sam153 for $30. Thank you very much for the Midsummer Wisdom. Cheers, Dave. Well, we missed Midsummer by an entire month, but considering I did not stream during Midsummer, I appreciate the super chat, and I will take the Midsummer's blessings very, very well. I'm thoroughly enjoying this summer, even though I haven't really taken a vacation yet. I'm very much looking forward to all the stuff that I can write and the people that I can help. And I'm really thinking, you know, I feel like we're about to hit another, it's not like critical mass is any one thing. First, there was critical mass for getting people to do meetups. Then there was critical mass for getting people not only to do meetups, but for people to make little actual organizations that could work on getting things done. Then there was the critical mass for having people that were actually in your town. And that is one that I think we're quickly approaching. And when that happens, we can do things like sports leagues, like game nights, like dinner parties. And that's when the culture will really start to flow. That's when we'll be able to put together scenes. And there will be able to be personal relationships we can build with like-minded kindred spirits that really will be the basis for the next thing that comes afterwards. But thank you very much, Sam153. Always good to see you here. Absolute Defender for $10. Mamdani and Barry Weiss are one and the same in that they don't actually believe in their ideology, which is why engaging Barry on liberalism is a fruitless endeavor. Yes. Very astute observation. Both Barry Weiss and Mamdani are not ideological liberals. They will embrace progressivism or discard it, depending on whether it serves their own personal ambitions and the ambitions of the groups that they feel they represent. Barry Weiss is a Zionist through and through, and Mamdani is a Muslim third worldist through and through, and that is the primary identity that they hold, not socialism. And the people that support them in the name of liberalism or progressivism or socialism are in for a rude surprise when it comes back. Because the other shoe will always drop. Their primary loyalties will always bubble to the surface. And they will reveal themselves in time, if they haven't already. I wrote an article called Against Barry Weissism that was supposed to be published in a magazine, but it was a little bit too spicy for the mainstream, so it went on to the Substack. And apparently people really liked it. So, you know, there you go. The Novus Ordo, okay, Wingman 45 for $2 says the Novus Ordo is chapada. Yeah, well, I am Novus Ordo, so I take that personally. But look, Wingman 45, in terms of aesthetics, the Novus Ordo is chapada. It looks terrible. It's in this, you know, the Novus Ordo is the predominant way of celebrating Mass. It is 100% holy, and I am loyal to the Bishop of Rome, absolutely. I do not want to detract from its holiness, but the Novus Ordo, as it exists currently in most churches, has a horrible problem with aesthetics. It looks terrible. It is in this transitional state where the people who want to take it in more of a trad direction or more ascendant, but the choirs aren't able to sing the songs yet, and the congregation isn't really ready for, or the parishioners aren't really ready for that. And so you have this like weird like amalgamation halfway point between everything, and it doesn't have any kind of aesthetically unifying principles. And I think chopped is a good way, or choppata is a good way of putting it. So thank you very much, Wingman45. Waspy Synth for $10 says, hello again, Dave. Thanks for the stream. They are a great gift. I support your streams because I enjoy the lecture portion. The length of this stream is a feature, not a bug. Yeah, that is true. And that's just how I think. I ramble. I can't write short essays to save my soul. I wrote a short essay in that against Barry Weissism article, and it took me longer to write short than it took me to write those rambly like 10,000 word essays that go on my Substack all the time. I think it works well. But it's hard to get right because it's not what the algorithm wants. This is not what the algorithm wants. And my YouTube channel has not grown an inch in an entire year. I was at 50K last year and I'm at 50K this year. And it hasn't grown significantly. And 2 years ago, I hit 40K. So it's like there's just zero growth on YouTube. And that's unheard of in social media. In social media, your growth always was gradual and constant. And now growth is non-existent. I mean, the viewers haven't dropped off. I have as many viewers as ever. The viewers are very, very consistent, but there's no growth. It's the same viewers. It's a slight circulation, but YouTube does not make this a discoverable thing. And the same thing with Substack. It's very difficult. Substack has like slow but consistent growth, but very, very slow. YouTube does not have any of the growth, which makes it seem like I'm using the algorithm incorrectly. Just a plain man. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. Desert tortoise. We own desert tortoises as pets, so always glad to see a fellow tortoise appreciator, although we call them tortles sometimes. For $10, he says, hi, Dave. I'm a Christian mystic. Many people in politics are literally demonically influenced. The most important defense in spiritual sovereignty. The most important defense is spiritual sovereignty. Nobody has control over your soul except you and God. I completely endorse that statement. I have been on a mission. So here's one example of territoriality. So I have decided to do a Bible study as part of my routine. And I was considering a while, this Bible study is just me reading the King James Bible, specifically Psalms, trying to memorize portions of it, and then writing meditations in my own time. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, I'm doing writing. And writing is hard. Anytime I'm a writer that gets paid for writing on Substack, so I should be putting these meditations on Substack. And then my response was, no, I want to have writing that I do that is valuable to me and that never goes into a digital format. This will eternally not be digitized. It will exist only in my journal. And that's part of the way that I keep myself territorialized. I have a thing that I produce that is not digitizable. An AI trained on my social media could not replicate my personal, not that it ever could, but the data, there's no such thing as a data-driven thing, organic thing. The data is the residue of the organism, not its source. But hypothetically, there's a portion of me that exists in a completely territorialized form. And I think that is a part of spiritual sovereignty. I have to say this, reading the Bible directly, especially the Psalms, a huge source of spiritual strength. this is, I think that this is really, people underestimate this. And I think that far too few Catholics study the Bible. Okay. Someone's, blah, 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 blah. What is this? I lost my place because I started reading the chat. Never read the chat. So that's what this portion is. Thank you, Desert Tortoise. Going on to Just a Plain Man says, a longtime listener, thanks for what you do. Don't you think you are overthinking the problem of modern relationships? Most people I know don't want to pair up because they don't want responsibility. Well, again, Just a Plain Man, that would be true, except a lot of Zoomer guys do want the responsibility of meeting up. They're just not getting chances. So people are getting a lot fewer chances to meet up and make something work. And I think that is one huge problem for the younger generations, is they're just not getting the ability to cut their teeth on reality. So I do think that with the three sources that I listed as the source of modern romantic decline: social media or technology, economic decline on mainly the part of men, and the relative non-economic decline of women, and then finally ideology that has been fed to women that is just anti-human and aggressively cruel in the form of feminism, which is an extension of leftism generally. Those are the three causes. I think that's a fairly parsimonious explanation as to what the cause is for the decline in modern relationships. If you look at people, this is what Jonathan Last did. If you look at what people say on paper, there has not been a marked decline in people wanting relationships. There has somewhat among certain cohorts of women. There's been a 5% increase on women who just never want men and never want families. And so there is a hint of that, but that is not driving the massive decline in relationships and dating that we've seen sweep across the entire Western world. So I know that the people not wanting it is a minor effect and not one of the major ones. The major ones are the three ones that I listed, but none of the three causes of the dating/sex recession immediately lead you to the solution. So that needs to be kept in mind at all time. Vegas 77 for $10. Using my high school class at age 30, the one in the normal track are all married and have kids. For the peers of mine in the AP track, not one has a kid at age 30. Your IQ shredder is alarming. I have a very similar story to tell. They like I said before, if I were to go to my high school class and I were to take the jocks and I were to compare them to the anime nerds were all into Victorian books and romantic novels, and they talk constantly about relationships. And the jocks were all into Eminem and gangster rap and Tupac and whatever popular music there was. Probably not little boy bands, but probably their girlfriends were. And all the jocks are married and have kids, and all of the anime nerds have various problems at age 40. It's not a good scene. It's the track record for the nerds is very, very, very bad. I think that has less to do with IQ. For instance, in the stats, if you look at things via class and if you look at things in terms of pure IQ, the middle of the road people are the ones that are hit the hardest. If you're slightly above, you have a higher probability of dodging the bullet. And if you're way far above, if you're in the rich class, then you basically have no problem forming families. And in all likelihood, you probably have a very large family. And so it's the middle that really gets it, not the people who are high IQ can almost pass through the eye of the needle or the eye of the storm, whatever analogy you prefer. But yeah, for the middle ground, for the middle class, huge shredder, huge shredder, and we need to be aware of that. But thank you, Vegas77. Ryan G, for a very large donation. Thank you so much, $150. Please say a prayer for my father, Gordon, recently passed away. God bless you, Dave. Thank you, Ryan G. I'm going to say a special intention for those of our family members that have passed away. I will include a statement for your father, Gordon, when we read the Psalm tonight. And maybe I'll see if we can't find a Psalm of mourning. Maybe that would be an appropriate thing we can do. Psalm 34, it says. Maybe Psalm 34 would be a good one. Or Psalm 139. That sounds like a good one. Comfort to those who mourn. So Psalm 139, we'll say that at the end of the stream. And my deep condolences, I should also say, because it is, I lost my father 2 years ago. It still feels really terrible. It feels selfish to say that my main difficulty is that it feels almost like I should be the next person to die. And it also feels like I am the person who's responsible for the future happening. While my father was alive, even as he was very aged, it always felt like I was the son, and the father was the person who was kind of looking far into the future and making sure that things took care of themselves. But now that he's gone, that's no longer something that I can feel. And it feels selfish to say that that's the part that emotionally hits me the most. I mean, also just the things that we did together and his presence in my life and all the memories I have. But I find myself thinking about the selfish reasons. I feel the selfish reasons, unfortunately, are what I emotionally struggle with the most. Just the feeling of, being the one who's the oldest and facing the future in that capacity. It's weird. I'm not prepared to talk about that right now, but I will offer some prayers for your father. Greater Dane says, for $21, great stream, Dave. What do you think about the poet Ezra Pound? Extremely influential poetry, extremely controversial politics, a unique American figure. I read the Pisan cantos and I did not understand a thing. I like them. I like portions of them. I think I get what Ezra Pound was going for. Ezra Pound, before I read the Pisan cantos, he was predominantly known as somebody who discovered other people, right? Wasn't he the guy that discovered Robert Frost and all this stuff? He was a editor and a popularizer and a critic, and he also wrote poetry. And I have a big collection of poetry. I always say with poetry, like there's this like total midwit book called The Top 500 Poems. And there's an audio companion too that they often sell it with, that give you those poems being read by their original authors, or at least those poems, but with authors who were around during the time of recording technology. I think the first one they have is Alfred Lord Tennyson. But midwit or not, those top 500 poem books are amazing, and I can't recommend them enough. You need to have one on your shelf. Having poetry or popular poetry as a reference is critical. And I think no American household should not have a reference book of all poems. And there's poems by Ezra Pound. I don't remember them being very memorable, I have to confess. The Pisan cantos was memorable, but I didn't understand anything he was going for. I understood some of his references, and obviously they're cantos, so Dante is an obvious reference. Talking about another poem that was organized into cantos, but I didn't get the thrust of it. I didn't understand. I was not ready for that book, and I need to revisit it. It is on the list of things for me to revisit intellectually, but I am not going to venture back into that without somebody to guide me. I literally need a Virgil to take me through the P's and cantos and explain to me what all of this means. But I have generally positive emotions when I regard Ezra Pound. I think that his affiliation with the wrong side of the war, or depending on your opinions, I don't believe that there is a wrong side of any war. I do believe that. Well, I do believe that all of the leaders of that war were very evil, but I do not like the Axis rulers any more than I like the Allied rulers at the time, and it was a big tragedy. And I think that Ezra Pound's affiliation with the losing side of that war unjustly destroyed his reputation. And I think he's one of the people who was unfairly maligned for being on the wrong side of a war that had crimes on both sides. And I think he deserves to be rehabilitated. Okay. Thank you very much, Greater Dane. I think this is the last one. Let me reload this, but just so I don't miss anything here, refresh the page. That is indeed the last one. The last one is by Avrin Dragan. I will catch this tomorrow, Dave. Hope all goes well for you and your family. Are you familiar with Michael Hudson? Sargon published him in the latest Islander. Really exciting because his theories have explanatory power, and he's mostly known in the boomer Marxist sphere. Wow, I have to read that now. I do not have the latest Islander. I think I have 2 Islander magazines, and I am lacking the other ones. And look, if you are reading this or listening to this right now, and I know you sometimes listen to my podcast, although if not, I will bother you the next time I talk to you. You gotta get the Islander into a larger print run. I would absolutely subscribe to this magazine if it had a larger print run or a more consistent print run. I want every version of the Islander, and I don't want to get scalped for it on eBay. I really don't. So I don't know. I'm not going to tell you're the businessman. I am the hack part-timer podcaster who's doing this after he got off his wage slave job. So far from me to tell you how to run your business, but it would help a brother out if you could take pity on us plebs and actually publish the Islander in volume enough for me to actually talk about it. The issue with the Islander is I always want my articles to be read by everybody, and it's a prestige magazine. It's an honor to be published in the Islander, but it's also really hard to get people to read a magazine that is essentially a collector's item the week after it gets published. So that's my love-hate relationship with the Islander. I'm not going to tell the Lotus Eaters how to run their business. I definitely want them because it is every Islander that's ever been published have had articles that have been phenomenal and groundbreaking. And the only public record we have of them is like Sargon, our YouTube videos that Sargon makes overviewing their content. And it's, look, I guess I get it, guys. I get it. I was just telling you how I felt it necessary to have some artistic output that was not digitized, and in many ways, this is the Lotus Eaters version of that territorialization of content, of art, and maybe that's what the Islander should be. But it's just for my temporal purposes, it is very, very frustrating to have to deal with that limitation because either my ability to interact with the conversation or my pocketbook have to really hurt to get my hands on these things. So thank you very much, Avern Dragon. And I think we are done for the night. So it's Psalm 139 is the Psalm of morning. Let's do, I always do King James V. First of all, I will say, I would like to offer up these prayers, whatever prayers that we have for our faithful departed and for the departed still in reconciliation with the Lord, especially Ryan's father, Gordon. So please offer up silently whatever prayers you have, and I will read our psalm for the night. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my downsitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain unto it. Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, there I stand. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even though the night shall be light about me. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as day. The darkness and light are both alike in thy countenance. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will pray to thee, for I am fearful and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did not see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, in which continuance were fashioned. When as yet there was none of them. How precious are thy thoughts unto me, O God! How great is the sum of them! If I should count them, they are more a number than the sand. When I awake, I am with thee. Surely thou wilt slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, ye bloody men. For they speak against thee wickedly, and thine enemies take thy name in vain. Do not I hate them, O Lord, that hate thee? Am I not grieved with those that rise up against thee? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them in mine enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see there be any wicked way in me, and lead me into the way that is righteous and everlasting. That is the psalm. Perhaps not as morning as I thought, but certainly something to think about. A contemplation on life and the battle to come. So thank you very much for joining me for this podcast, Fiddler's Green Podcast, number 76, The New Romantics. Have a wonderful rest of the evening and a blessed rest of the week.